stop using and selling drugs to one another. See, we're getting ready to be put in a real trap with this legalization of marijuana. So everybody, every black person can be unemployed, and then they can sit in their corner and get high on marijuana with whatever they decide to put in it. And people won't be asking for jobs and being determined that they're going to get jobs and going to get an education. No, everybody can start getting high on marijuana because somebody said it's medicinal and it's legal. So we better beware.
What about the people who say the legalization of marijuana is fighting against racism because you have so many black people who are unjustly incarcerated as a result of racist enforcement of these drug laws? So this would be a good thing, and it would keep black people out of greater confinement.
No, we can do it by stop using and selling drugs to one another. See, if I'm not using drugs, then I can't be incarcerated for drugs. And I see so many males, young males in my practice who would become psychotic, almost never to return to normal from marijuana use because you don't know what's in it.
A BBC investigation has uncovered a multi-billion-dollar business of super-strength cannabis being smuggled into the UK. Originally known as Cali weed, this strain of cannabis was first cultivated in California, but it's now being grown in Thailand and then shipped to the UK, either by cargo transport or human drug mules. Last year, the British authorities seized 167 tons of the drug with a street value of more than $2 billion. More from our investigations reporter Scott Hesketh.
Super-strength cannabis is flooding the UK like never before, with Border Force officials seizing record amounts. But what's behind the clamour? This is Z, not his real name. He agreed to talk at an undisclosed location after I was introduced by a source close to the UK drugs trade. Z operates in Thailand, where legalisation prompted a freewheeling market and major interest from gangs in Liverpool and Manchester.
The Thai guys out there on a remote island, we started to grow Cali weed.
Z recruits local growers to cultivate seeds he buys from legal dispensaries in California, growing it on the cheap in unlicensed conditions to mimic the sought-after Cali strains. He shows me astonishing pictures of what he says is his latest yield. He says 100 kilos landed in the UK before Christmas.
Yeah, the buyers are all up at Liverpool, Manchester, mainly up the north who we know.
Z recruits couriers to smuggle the drug into the UK.
They don't really know much. They're just thinking it's a holiday. Unlimited drugs, unlimited girls. On the last day, that's the day when you just put it on them. Yeah, take these bags.
Last year, British border officials seized 167 tonnes of herbal cannabis. The haul includes 28 tonnes flown in suitcases by 800 couriers arrested by the National Crime Agency.
I've had a couple of binges on the heroin, a bit of the crack cocaine.
This courier told me he brought back cases to pay off a drugs debt. He said he'd got through 6 times. Did you not feel that you were being exploited?
No, it was a choice I made.
What are you feeling when you're walking through that airport?
It's stressful. You know, you're wondering, has anybody seen me? I was just thankful for it when it was all over.
Tightened security at airports has left traffickers looking for alternative smuggling methods, with gangs shipping it over hidden in cargo. Z says he used popcorn cans to send packages to Manchester. He's even used the post. Do they know what it is they're taking delivery of?
Yeah, pair of trainers.
Once Z's product lands in the UK, it's placed in shiny packaging to make it look like it's a premium Californian import. What would you say to people who say cannabis is a harmful drug?
Nobody could even improve it another way. He's got depression, anxiety. Yeah, I beg to differ.
So these are lab-based data, or these are epidemiological data?
Psychiatrist Dr. Marty DeForti led the UK's biggest study on cannabis and psychosis.
So the greatest risk is associated in the chance of developing a clinical psychotic disorder, predominantly driven by paranoia. So people might also hear voices that nobody else can hear, and then we are beginning to unlock also potential risk for general physical health. So, for instance, there is something called scrutinizing.
Scrutinizing.
It's a fusion between screaming and vomiting.
In a statement, the Home Office called our reports concerning. They said seizures hit a record high last year, taking massive quantities of drugs out of circulation and costing gangs billions. Do you think the Home Office crackdown is working?
No.
Why?
Because more of it is coming through. It's never going to stop.
Our investigations reporter, Scott Hesketh.
I come from a family where people have been political and thinking about political ideas, and I grew up in that environment. And I also grew up in an environment where I think that my parents were training us to complain about things that were not correct. One time the FBI and the Secret Service went to see my mother, asking her about something that I was doing. I was so proud of my mother. She said she raised us to protest. And so they didn't get any help there. I don't know whether they thought she was going to take a broom to me or what.
60 years ago, on July 4th, 1966, President Johnson signed the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, into law. The law was a critical step towards government transparency, even though Johnson decided not to hold a public event for the signing and instead issued a signing statement focused on exemptions for national security. FOIA only got stronger after the Watergate scandal in 1974, when Congress amended the law to make it one of the most powerful tools available for journalists, researchers, advocates, and everyday people to hold the government accountable and reveal severe wrongdoing by the U.S. government, both at home and overseas. Well, now FOIA seems to be in serious trouble. A Washington Post investigation from earlier this year found the massive purge at federal agencies last year has had a significant impact on the number of workers responding to FOIA requests. At a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on FOIA in April of last year, Illinois Democratic Senator Dick Durbin described the reduction in numbers of FOIA officers in an attempt to foil FOIA. Our next guest has a new piece in the New Republic. It's headlined, "My Front Row Seat to the Slow Death of the Freedom of Information Act." In it, he writes, "I file FOIA requests for a living, and the landmark law, which turned 60 this week, is near a breaking point." Ian Head is Open Records Manager at the Center for Constitutional Rights, joining us from Los Angeles. Ian, thanks so much for being there. Why don't you hold forth on what's happened to FOIA, why it began, and what kind of access people have to documents today, to using the Freedom of Information Act?
Thanks so much for having me. That's a big question. I'll try to address it as best as possible. I think, FOIA has been a really, as you said, amazing tool to and I really want to key in on the different groups of people that you mentioned, especially ordinary people, to access government information and records, not just lawyers or journalists. Anyone can file a FOIA. And so I think it's been a really powerful tool. And in my 15-plus years at the Center for Constitutional Rights, I've kind of watched it work in amazing ways, and especially with the different social justice organizations and organizers and lawyers that we work with. All that being said, I think I've also witnessed this kind of increased level of delay and kind of tactics to kind of block and dissuade people from filing or following through on their FOIA requests. And that's been really troubling and has really, I think, as you said, increased under this administration.
Yeah, and I'd like to stress that point because I, as a journalist, I've been filing FOIA requests for more than 50 years now, and I've been stunned at, as you mentioned, the longer delays now in responding by government agencies, even though they're usually required either at the federal or state level to respond within 5 days or 7 business days. They now drag stuff out for months, sometimes years. Also, the number of exceptions have grown dramatically, especially especially when it comes to government contracts or private companies. And unless you word your request precisely, the agencies often claim that it's too broad for them to answer. So this is not just under Trump. This has been constantly happening now for decades, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really a key point I'm trying to make here is it's gotten extremely bad in this last year and a half under Trump, but this has been going on for decades. And when I talk to folks such as yourself or others who have been filing FOIA requests, you know, I know people who file FOIA requests in the 1970s and 80s didn't have to go to court, were able to get pretty important material from the FBI, even the CIA, without having to litigate those requests. And now it is literally, especially with the large law enforcement agencies, so hard. They might not even respond ever. And like you said, months down the road, it's really, you know, I talked to a journalist the other day who said she doesn't even file federal FOIA requests at this point because there just is, it's kind of a waste of time. She'd rather file state level requests. But I mean, we need to be able to file federal FOIA requests so we can see what this government is doing.
And the Trump administration is trying to reclassify finished documents to avoid release. How could that affect the entire FOIA framework?
When you say finished documents?
In other words, the documents that were already completed, but then they're reclassifying them afterwards.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're trying, in my experience, to kind of reclassify all kinds of material. And also just, you know, when we do get these documents, they're so heavily redacted that it becomes a kind of ongoing back and forth conversation, whether it's with the agency or the government lawyers if we're in court, just trying to squeeze a little bit of material out of the redactions. I mean, I think they have a lot of new strategies to kind of drag these things on to the point where it's been, say, a year and a half, 2 years since you filed your FOIA request, and the reason for doing so may have come and gone. You know, the policies that you were originally asking for may no longer be in effect or in effect the same way. And so by kind of creating these different administrative rules and kind of dragging things out, it really makes FOIA a less efficient and less helpful tool when it comes to actually getting records.
We knew that we had to monitor our enemies. We also come to realize that we need to monitor the people who are monitoring them.
Well, who's going to monitor the monitors of the monitors?
Tonight, top officials in Milwaukee respond to the criminal charges filed against an internal affairs police detective.
Yeah, those officials say they're satisfied with the safeguards to prevent and identify misuse of the license plate reader system, despite another officer facing criminal charges related to illegally spying on multiple citizens. Investigative reporter James Stratton tonight taking questions to the top of the department and the mayor.
When we do cross the line, accountability is real.
Milwaukee's police chief responding to another one of his officers now facing criminal charges. Detective Taranji Chapman of MPD's Internal Affairs Division was investigating misuse of the city's license plate reader cameras. One of two officers investigating now resigned officer Josue Ayala, who pleaded guilty to tracking an ex-girlfriend and her partner 179 times. But now Detective Chapman finds himself the target of another internal investigation. Prosecutors say he admitted to putting a GPS on a victim's car back in 2024 and tracking that person and another in the department's license plate reader database from these roadside cameras known as flock cameras. A criminal complaint says he searched their plates 20 times, writing test or training in the search function. Police are only allowed to use flock for police work.
Disappointment. I know that this is a, again, challenging conversation, knowing that this is not only a violation of the law, but also a violation of our public trust. But I always want to remind our public that we took this seriously.
After Ayala's charge, MPD reduced the number of officers with flock access, requiring them to sign this user agreement, and now monthly audits.
We're always open to see if there is other best practices for us to utilize or other things that we can be doing.
But right now you believe you have all the safeguards in place?
I believe that we have a robust safeguards in place.
There was accountability here, and I want there to continue to be accountability if this were to happen again.
Do you support the use of flock safety still?
I do. Again, I think there's usefulness in technology in policing. We should embrace technology in policing when done the right way.
Chapman did not answer his door. His attorney did not return a request for comment. But in a criminal complaint, prosecutors described that he was emotional and embarrassed about his actions and their impact on MPD. In Milwaukee, I'm James Stratton, WISN 12 News.
The Milwaukee Police Association responded to the charges, saying in part, as with any citizen, this detective is presumed innocent unless proven guilty, and we respect the integrity of that process.
I thought I asked for an African-American to replace Terry.
You requested an Afro-American?
African-American. Jerry, you know I did. I put it in writing.
I didn't see it. You see it?
If you don't like her, you send her back.
Yeah, you tell her you didn't like her performance because she was white.
What? That's not the point.
Flipper, she's been here for 5 minutes. Give her a chance. This sounds dangerously like reverse discrimination to me.
In 2024, Washington state took a novel approach to undoing some of the historical damage caused by racist housing policy. That's the year the state launched the Covenant Home Ownership Program. It provides no-interest loans to descendants of people impacted by redlining or racially restricted covenants in the state. Those loans can be used for down payments and closing costs. So far, more than 1,500 home buyers have benefited from the program, and supporters say it's given people the chance at home ownership their ancestors were deprived of. But the program has opponents. After it was established, a nonprofit group quickly sued, alleging racial discrimination. And earlier this year, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development launched an investigation. Here to explain why is Susan Shane. She reported on the Homeownership Covenant program for the New York Times. Susan, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Libby.
We're going to get into the specifics of the Covenant Homeownership Program in just a moment, but let's start with the problem that it's trying to solve. These racial covenants, they started to become widespread in 1917 because the Supreme Court had banned race-based zoning laws that year. At one point, there were almost 80,000 covenant-restricted properties in Washington state. So what are racial covenants and why were they so common?
So racial covenants became popular, yeah, exactly, in 1917 after the Supreme Court banned zoning by race. And so that's when realtors and developers started adding language to property deeds that said that properties could only be owned or occupied by white people. Sometimes they also specified specific races or ethnicities or people of certain religious backgrounds that weren't allowed to be at those properties. Realtors and developers really pushed adding those as a way to restrict neighborhoods to certain races without technically zoning by race, which was made illegal.
And these racial covenants were used in many parts of the country through the middle of the 20th century. I mean, what's the timeline for how long these were on the books and how long they were actually being used?
So the Supreme Court technically banned states from enforcing such covenants in 1948, but homeowners could legally add them until 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed.
So people were being impacted by these, again, for decades in the United States. And this is something that, you know, people point to as developing a lot of wealth, for example, for white families who were able to buy in all kinds of neighborhoods and denying that wealth building opportunity to, say, black families who were often racially redlined out of those neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, so those years that were following World War II, that was like a period of a real housing boom in the United States. That's when 30-year mortgages became really popular. There was a ton of new builds happening. And it's when a lot of white families were able to purchase homes cheaply and, you know, start building wealth that they eventually passed on to their children. And then those children were able to use that wealth to put a down payment on a new home. But families of color were often locked out of those opportunities, whether it was they were locked out of certain neighborhoods or they were locked out of financing options.
So basically, the program is trying to open up these homeownership opportunities to people who were impacted by these racist policies of the past. So how does somebody qualify for this program, Susan, and what does it do once they qualify? How does it help them buy a home?
There are a few different qualifications for the program. So one is that you need to be earning less than 120% of your county's median income for your household. So in King County, that's like almost $200,000 for a household. And then the other big qualification is that the applicant, either they themselves or their parent, grandparent, or great-grandparent, must have lived in Washington prior to 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. And that person who lived in Washington prior to 1968 must also be of a race or ethnicity that was subject to these racial covenants, and that still shows disproportionate rates of homeownership today. So those are the big qualifications. Then you can get a 0% interest loan to buy your first home. You also have to be a first-time home buyer. It can be up to 20% of a home's cost, or a total of $150,000 plus closing costs. And that loan does not need to be paid back until that person sells the house, refinances the house, moves, or after 30 years, the loan is also forgiven. And for people who earn less than 80% of their county's median income, that loan can also be forgiven after 5 years if they meet a few different qualifications.
And we should note that these disparities exist today. I mean, 2/3 of white families in Washington own their homes. Only 1/3 of black families own their own homes. Susan, how is this program funded? Where does the money come from?
So the fee comes from a $100 document recording fee that is processed on every single real estate transaction in the state. And that's been being charged and added to real estate transactions since January 2024. So far, it's amassed about $175 million, and nearly all of that has been spent on these down payments and closing costs to help people buy homes.
And you spoke with at least one person who's benefited from the program. Can you kind of talk to me about what it has meant in that home buyer's life?
So I spoke to a woman named Tiara Cato, who actually works in Seattle. She's lived in Seattle her whole life. Her great-grandmother moved to Seattle in the 1960s, and that was a time, when Black families were barred from a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of financing options. There's one other cousin, I think, on her dad's side who's been able to buy a home. But other than that, her 6 siblings, her mom, her grandmother, her great-grandmother, everybody's been renters. And she kind of thought that's what her future and her daughter's future would be as well. And then she found out about this program, and she was able to buy a home in Tacoma. And she just said it's just been unbelievable. Like, she spoke about her daughter running up and down the halls, and she's actually expecting another child very soon, and how she's going to be able to bring that baby home from the hospital to a place that she owns, which is not something that very many people in her family have done. And she's just so excited to be building equity and be building a future for them.
But some people see problems with this program, right? Almost immediately, just within a couple months after it launched, there was a nonprofit group that filed a lawsuit over this. What were they alleging here was wrong with the Covenant homeownership program?
They allege that the program is discriminatory in nature, that it's not equal protection under the Constitution, and that I actually spoke with the executive director, who herself is Black, and she said that this program sets a dangerous precedent, and that it could ultimately harm people of color, because she said that she's seen what happens when equal protection is applied selectively, speaking of her own ancestors. And so she's worried this could create some type of slippery slope where you're creating different race-based programs. And she was really clear that she believes, and Fair for All, the organization that she heads, does support the government helping first-time homebuyers, but she wants the program to be for anybody under a certain income level and not have race to not have anything to do with it.
Because right now, just to re-up what you were talking about with the rules of the program, in order to qualify, your relative had to have been of a race that was subject to a racial covenant. She's saying because it's not open to white people that it would be discriminatory.
Yeah, and it's not just not only open to white people, it's also not open to people of whose ancestors were Japanese or whose ancestors were Jewish. And those were people who were subject to racial covenants, but they don't show disproportionate rates of homeownership today. Their rates of homeownership are on par with whites. So yeah, there are racial restrictions for the program, and that seems to be the big point that Fair for All, and I know you mentioned earlier HUD, that the big point that they're contending with this program.
I understand that a federal judge dismissed the initial lawsuit from the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, or FAIR, the group that you just were talking about. What's the status of that challenge now? Is that kaput?
So the judge basically said the FAIR wanted the program to be put on pause while the lawsuit was working its way through the courts. And the judge said that he didn't find enough evidence to put the program on pause at the moment. So the lawsuit is still working its way through the courts. It could take years. One scholar I spoke to thought that there was a chance that this lawsuit or the investigation from HUD and a subsequent lawsuit from the Justice Department could end up at the Supreme Court and have, ripple effects throughout the country, whatever was decided.
Oh, wow. And so tell me more about the HUD investigation that was announced by the Trump administration in March. And the allegation here is that there's a violation of the Fair Housing Act, right? Do you know more about what they're looking into, what the reasoning is of this investigation into the Covenant Homeownership Program in Washington State?
They're basically saying that it's illegal discrimination. Again, that it's illegal discrimination on the basis of race. And so they are investigating the program. And eventually the constitutional scholar I spoke with said that it could get referred to the Justice Department if they want to pursue a lawsuit in that realm.
So Washington State is kind of out in front on this issue, right? I mean, there were racial covenants all across the country, but are we the only state so far that has taken on this kind of reparation adjacent program to try to remedy those past wrongs?
Exactly. I mean, there's really not a lot of other forerunners for this program. So there was a program in Evanston, Illinois, that was offering $25,000 each to Black residents who lived in the city between 1919 and 1969 or had ancestors who did, kind of as reparations for redlining. It was really hard for me to get in touch with the city of Evanston. I tried so many different ways, but they would not really confirm or deny whether the program is ongoing because they are currently being sued for discrimination. And the Justice Department also recently announced an investigation as well. So they were very hesitant to talk. I couldn't get anybody to confirm or deny anything. But basically, that program seemed to be the biggest forerunner to this program. But Washington's program is definitely the first statewide program of its kind.
I mean, we should say that this is all happening in the context of the Trump administration going after diversity programs in all walks of American life, in universities, in the public sector, in the private sector. This is something that they have really set their target on. And so to have Washington State start this program around the time of Trump being reelected in 2024, it seems like it was inevitable that there would be this collision between the administration and what Washington is trying to do. What do you think about that?
I mean, yes, I don't think anybody is surprised. I spoke to one of kind of the architects of the program in the legislature, and she said that she was honestly surprised that they managed to get it passed when they did. She's spoken to other people in other states who would love to do something like this, but it's just not the time. And it seems like Washington was able to pass this at a pretty important time. Yeah, I do think it's really interesting and in light of affirmative action and everything. And I spoke to a constitutional scholar about this issue, and she seemed to think that Washington had a pretty strong case because the origins of the program came from this 200-page study that the state of Washington commissioned that basically looked at the state's role in redlining and in registering racially restrictive deeds. And she said that kind of shows that the Covenant Homeownership Program is Washington trying to remediate its own discriminatory practices. And she says that has typically had a strong basis in constitutional law.
Is there anything else that you're watching for as this unfolds? I mean, any idea about any future milestones in this investigation by HUD or what you're going to be following as the story progresses?
I'll definitely be keeping an eye on these lawsuits and on HUD's investigation and seeing what happens there, because like I said earlier, I mean, this could have a big impact in Washington, but it could have an even bigger impact across the country.
Susan Shane is a freelance writer who reported on Washington State's Covenant Home Ownership Program for the New York Times. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Well, Haiti is on the list of what's supposed to be. Haiti, the people who are called Haitians, predominantly are people who are classified as non-white, but they're not supposed to ever have anything under the system of white supremacy except punishment.
The Supreme Court allowed President Trump to revoke the legal status that has allowed 350,000 Haitians to live and work in the U.S., status they received because of dangerous conditions in Haiti. The administration says Haiti is safe enough to return to, but in court, Haitians argued racism motivated the decision. They are now coping with the court's rejection of that claim. NPR's Adrian Florido reports.
Over the years, President Trump has said many denigrating things about Haitians, including this about Haitian immigrants in Ohio.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
At the Supreme Court, lawyers for Haitians in the U.S. on temporary protected status, or TPS, argued these and other comments were proof the administration's decision to revoke TPS for Haitians was motivated by racism. Gerlene Joseph runs the Haitian Bridge Alliance, a San Diego group that advocates for Haitian immigrants.
Haitians are eating your pets has continued to be the narrative when it comes for black people. Be afraid of black people because they are going to steal your X, Y, and Z. Therefore, we have to make sure they are no longer a part of our community.
The Constitution prohibits government discrimination based on race, so the court had to decide, did race likely motivate the decision to end TPS for Haitians? In the majority opinion, Justice Samuel Alito said no. Trump's remarks, he wrote, were not overtly racial. In a dissent, Justice Elena Kagan said Trump's remarks were full of racial stereotypes and gave more examples of what he said, that Haiti is filthy, that Haitians in the U.S. probably have AIDS. The conservative majority's rejection of the racial animus claims and its ruling that courts have no say in the executive's TPS decisions mean ICE agents could soon start rounding up Haitians en masse.
It's like they treat us like we're not human.
Josiane Valsaint is one of the TPS holders about to lose her status. She's proud to be Haitian and had hoped the court would repudiate the president's attacks as racist, but it did not mess with her mind, she says.
Even though I know I'm not that, but I said, wait a minute, maybe what he said is true. Because why they don't want us here while we are like working, paying tax, doing the right thing.
Another woman, Promise, asked me to use only her first name because she fears being detained by ICE. She avoids going out because of that. But also because the government's narrative about Haitians has made her worry about how people will treat her if they learn she is Haitian. Gerlene Joseph of the Haitian Bridge Alliance says this is common. To protect themselves when they go out, some Haitian immigrants have felt compelled to lie about where they come from.
Are you Haitian? Maybe I don't answer at all. Or I could say I'm black, this, I'm Cuban, I'm, anything but Haitian.
It's been hard for her to watch these ruptures form in a proud community.
The level of degradation of a human spirit, that is what we have experienced, and that is what we are witnessing today.
Her group is now asking Congress to step in to protect Haitian TPS holders, but is also helping people prepare in case ICE agents show up at their homes. Many Haitians, like Beatrice, are finding strength in identity and in Haiti's proud history as the world's first black republic and the first nation to abolish slavery. Beatrice, a U.S. citizen, asked that we withhold her last name because her sisters have TPS.
Whatever the president of the Supreme Court said, it will never break us. Together, we're stronger. That's us, Haitian, beautiful people.
She hopes other people will take the time to see that. Adrian Florido, NPR News.
A text out of context is a pretext. This matter must be put in some kind of historical perspective. Surely we must know that racism is the cancer of the American soul.
President Trump's administration chose Independence Day weekend to attack the Smithsonian Institution again.
The administration accuses the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History here in Washington of, quote, extreme political activism for its portrayal of history. Lonnie Bunch, the head of the Smithsonian, recently discussed his institution's mission in an unrelated interview on NBC's Meet the Press.
In essence, America's greatest strength, it's not running away from its history, but it's understanding how that history shaped us and continues to shape us.
Sarah Weichsel joins us next. She's executive director of the American Historical Association. Welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, so you've seen the latest accusations against the Smithsonian, which didn't strike me as all that major. They disagreed with a few bits of wording on cards and so forth. What do you make of it?
It is precisely what I would have expected in terms of the kinds of criticisms that it focuses in on about the founding fathers and ideas about patriotism. This is in line with what we've been seeing come from the administration over the last year and a half about its version of history that it once told.
The bottom line here, I suppose, is the administration wants a kind of common view of American history that brings Americans together by emphasizing that, well, emphasizing, how would you put it, that all the founding fathers were all positive?
What the report is making clear is that the story the administration once told is a basic consensus view of U.S. history. That's the words the report uses. And what that actually looks like is a flattened, more easily narrated set of facts. And in this case, also really focusing in on that founding moment. And they want the museum to do this by giving a recounting of the most basic timeline of U.S. history. But here's the problem. American history is anything but a basic set of facts. It's really complicated, and that's why it's so interesting. So the timeline approach that the report's advocating for, sure, that's a useful tool for orienting visitors, but the excitement and the depth of historical interpretation, that comes through historical evidence that the museum exhibits. The objects, the documents, the images, those help tell our national stories, and they allow visitors to connect to those stories in ways that are going to inspire them to explore further. And that's the whole point of the museum.
You've walked around that museum, I would imagine. Does it distort history in your view?
It does not distort history. And in fact, the report is misrepresenting the museum's collection, and especially the exhibition of extraordinary artifacts that tell the history of the American Revolution. They seem to have missed entirely, for instance, one of the exhibits that takes up the greatest floor space, The Price of Freedom, which tells the history of American war.
Wow. Wow. I want to ask briefly in the seconds we have left about Lonnie Bunch, who we heard at the beginning, first African-American head of the Smithsonian Institution. He has not been fired. He's not been removed. He's not been pushed aside. How would you rate his performance over the last year and a half of pressure?
I think that Secretary Bunch has done an extraordinary job. He is committed to ensuring that the Smithsonian maintains its independence, and that is something that we all need to be concerned about and that we consider to be paramount, independence of the Smithsonian.
On this week after Independence Day weekend, Sarah Weichsel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.
She's with the American Historical Association.
People were sharing helmets because we were lied to, saying that we had equipment on the way.
Treen had to wear his helmet that he had in high school that I bought him. That I know it wasn't registered and it wasn't a certified helmet for this season.
And his helmet comes off. I can't believe this happened again.
We're players sharing helmets, yes.
Is that dangerous?
Football is dangerous. Yeah.
I received an email today with the press release announcing that Marshawn Kneeland, the Cowboys defensive lineman who died at age 24 last year by suicide, and it was a tragedy. And as we have seen in many other cases, the brain of a deceased football player is studied for evidence of CTE. They still don't have a way to diagnose CTE in the living. And in most of these cases, there is some degree of CTE, which isn't a surprise when you're talking about somebody who has played football most of their life. The finding was that Marshawn Kneeland had stage 1, which is the lowest level. Stage 4 is the highest. it just underscores the risk. And this goes back to what we discussed last week in the aftermath of the Chris Johnson news that he has ALS. Football players will say, we know what we signed up for. It's important that they always know exactly what they signed up for. It's not just the injury that can happen to you right now. It is the condition you can develop later in life. And, the reality is when you're 23, 25, hell, just pick a number in your 20s. Now, as you get closer to 30, you start thinking about these things more. But the younger you are, you're not thinking about life when you're 60 or 70, 80. You may as well be 500 years away. It's a different lifetime. It's a different person. That guy will worry about it. So I'd say most players, even if they fully know all risks, will still play, especially at the highest levels. But it's important that they know the risks. We don't want to hide the risks. We don't want to have this moment where, hey, everybody knows the risks now, and then time passes and we don't talk about the risks. And that was the reason that Jeff Pearlman was as upset as he was, justifiably so, for the way that the disclosure of Chris Johnson's ALS was handled, with no mention whatsoever, nothing about the connection between ALS and football, and the connection's real. It wouldn't be one of the conditions that qualify players who retired as of July 7, 2014 for payment under the NFL's Unlimited Concussion Settlement Fund. ALS, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, CTE. So it's not something that we should refuse to talk about, because every year there's a new crop of players who are starting to play football. Every year there's another group of college football players. Every year there are college football players who are migrating to the NFL. And every year you're going to have people who maybe didn't understand the full risks. Just because it's out there doesn't mean they've researched it. They understand the short-term risks. They don't understand the long-term risks, and it's fair to talk about it. It's not fair. It's mandatory, I think. Anybody that cares about football, we need to be sure that everyone who's playing fully understands the risk of playing, and they accept that risk. They're entitled to accept that risk, but they need to know what it is. That's what the concussion litigation flowed from, the idea that the risk was hidden from them. Now, if that case had gone to trial, plenty of the former players who testified, if telling the truth, they would have said, I'd have played anyway. But you still need to know. It's the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do. It's the responsible thing to do. And it would be irresponsible to just stop talking about it because, hey, we all know the risks now. We all know the risks, so let's just act like they aren't there.
The man knot, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Darrell Burton spent more than 20 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. In 2008, he was exonerated, but after more than 2 decades behind bars, restarting his life came with hurdles and very little support. Burton later co-founded the nonprofit Miracle of Innocence with his fellow exoneree, Lamont McIntyre. Their mission is to make sure future exonerees have a structured support system as soon as they walk out of prison, and long after the honeymoon phase of being released is over. Today, Steve is joined by Darrell Burton to discuss the challenges exonerees face and how Miracle of Innocence is helping those individuals reintegrate into society.
You know, you spent 24 years in prison for murder before being exonerated in 2008. Remind listeners, how was this murder pinned on you?
Well, the gentleman was killed in St. Louis, and the police and the prosecutor, they used 2 snitch witnesses, guys who they went into the jailhouse, and they made deals with these guys who were facing unrelated charges, and so that's how they pinned it on me.
Just snitches saying you're the guy, and did they get a break on their sentences as a result?
Exactly. They got a break on their sentences. One he was facing 30 years, and he got total leniency, and he was put out on probation. Yes, and the other one, I don't know what he got. I think he got money.
So this is a pretty typical situation when it comes to cases like yours. There's so much incentive for people to come up with a story that maybe in theory helps the authorities out, but it also gets them out of prison early, right?
That's right, yes. I mean, when guys are facing, that much time, they say anything that the police and the prosecutors want them to say, just to get a conviction on someone else. It's unfortunate, but that's one of the things that I hope that someday it get banned. Snitch jailhouse testimony. It should, they shouldn't be allowed to go and do that, because the defense attorneys actually can't do anything like that. They can't go and make a deal with somebody in the jail, promise them leniency, give them money, pay them to testify. If they did, they lose their license. They might get, put in jail themselves. But prosecutors do it all the time.
You went to prison in the 1980s, Darrell, and when you were exonerated, it was 2008. What types of changes were you met with when you walked out of that prison? Technology.
Life had changed so much. It's like, you could have dropped me in the middle of Japan or a foreign country. There's just, everything, the culture was different. And so I was trying to just keep up and figure things out. And I went and asked for some help, even with just basic things that I needed, like housing, transportation, food, et cetera, to this organization, reentry programs. And they said, we cannot help you. We only help guilty people. We don't help innocent people, which was also a culture shock to me, yes. Yeah. And that was one of the inspirations for us to start Miracle of Innocence, in Lamont, because they said, there's no help for you. If you guys want to do anything, you need to start an organization to help innocent people. We only help guilty people.
So what did you do when you walked out of prison? Where did you go? How did you survive those first few weeks?
I was homeless for a while. I was staying with one of my cousins here in Kansas City.
You were homeless?
I was homeless, yes. I was homeless. The landlord, he said, hey, this guy's got to go. He let me stay for a little while, but after a few weeks, he said, no, he's got to go. And I had to find a place. So I didn't have any place to go. I didn't have any money, and then didn't get any compensation. I couldn't get a job for 2 years, actually. And so what I did was an organization finally helped me, and they got me an apartment for about 6 months rent-free. And they just asked me, said, Darryl, you think you can make it from here? I said, well, I got 6 months rent-free. I have to do something. So I was walking, just going from company to company, trying to fill out applications to get a job, and then had to do applications on computers. I had never done that before. I was used to filling out applications right there in the company. They said, no, we don't do that anymore. So I had to figure out how to learn how to use a computer. I went to the library, asked the librarians to help me figure out how to use the computer to do applications. And I was doing applications, and when it comes to the part that said, have you ever been convicted of a crime? I had to answer, of course, yes, but there's an explanation. And I would just explain to you in an interview. I never got an interview with some of them except one time.
Because as soon as employers saw that you had spent time in prison, they were thinking, no, thank you, right?
That's correct. Because one interview that I did get, a guy, he looked at me and said, man, he said, what are you, Rip Van Winkle? You haven't worked in 25 years. Where have you been? And I had an article, front page, man, found innocent after being in prison 24 years. He said, oh, my God, you hear about stories like this. You never meet anybody like you. And he just said, let me take this to the back and to my supervisors. And they wanted to meet me. And they said also the same thing. We're sorry for what you've been through, but, man, 24 years in prison for a crime you didn't commit, that is just crazy. We'll give you a job. And the job was in St. Joe, Missouri. I live in Kansas City. And so I took the job. But my lawyers and the supporters asked me, well, Darryl, how are you going to get there? That's 50 miles from Kansas City, one way. I was going to ride a bike. And they said, you're going to ride a bike 50 miles to St. Joe? I didn't have no concept of distance. In prison, it's 1 mile, just 1 mile square. I didn't know how far 50 miles was. And they said, Darryl, do you know how far 50 miles is? I said, yes, it's 50 miles. That's all I know. They said, you can't ride a bike. That's 100 miles a day. I said, they gave me a job. It's $11.11 an hour. I said, man, I made $7.50 a month. So to me, I hit pay dirt.
Right. So what did you do?
Yeah, well, I went and started volunteering. I volunteered for Catholic Charities.
So you didn't take that job?
I didn't take the job. They didn't let me take the job.
Yeah.
They said, you can't do that. That's
you
not.
Figured out 50-mile bike ride was going to be a little too much.
Well, I used to jog like 5, 10 miles. So I was thinking 50 miles. I can ride 50 miles because I jog. I jog that, at least, 7 miles a day. Right. So I felt 50 miles. That's nothing on a bike. But I had no concept, hills and in the weather, for weather change, I was going to ride. Literally in my mind, I was going to ride that bike to St. Joe, Missouri.
You're describing the hardships when you come out of prison, but there's also this other phase that exonerees tend to go through, which is this honeymoon phase, if you will, because you're out of prison. Yeah. Describe that for us and how it fit you.
Well, of course, you're excited to be home. Your family's excited that you're home. The community, people will rally around you a little bit and try to support and help you. But, I mean, no one knows how to deal with someone who's been locked away that long for 2.5 decades. You know, this is an experience that I had never encountered. Nobody in my family had ever had experience with, even in the community. So how do you deal with somebody like that? People empathize and they sympathize, and they care about you, but they don't know what to do with you. Mm-hmm. You know, just like the organization said, we can't help you. Sorry, you're innocent. So my family and the community, no one would give me a job. They said, you have no skills, man. You have no job skills. So what can you do? I went in at 22. I came home at 47. So what can you do? And I said, I don't know what I can do because I haven't had a chance to do really much of anything except time. Right. And the technology. I didn't understand technology. I didn't know how to use cell phone. I had a debit card. Someone asked for my PIN number. I gave it to them. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to give my PIN number away. So I had no clue. I was it's like a little kid, man, a 2 or 3 year old kid. I need to relearn everything.
I want to underscore one point here, because if you'd gotten out of prison after having actually committed a real crime, there would have been some support structure for you. But because you were exonerated, you come out the door to nothing.
Exactly. And that's what the reentry program told me. They said, we'll lose our funding, Daryl, if we help you, because our organization get funded to help people who've committed the crime. And this is a reentry program for offenders who need housing assistance, job training. They need all kinds of support, transportation, phone communication. We can't give you that, because you're innocent. Our program is not designed to help innocent people. And that's what they said. We saw it right here in Kansas City.
So that's what Miracle of Innocence is all about, the organization that Correct. You and Lamont McIntyre helped set up. Tell us about what it does.
Right, correct. Miracle of Innocence, we help individuals get out of prison first. That's the first part of the organization. It's a two-pronged program, and our mission is to help people get out by raising money to hire lawyers, investigators, forensic scientists, whatever's needed. And then once they get out, we help them with all kinds of other reentry wraparound service support, like housing assistance, job training. We help them get them cell phones, transportation, clothes, food, identification, counseling, mentorship, everything that we can do to help them.
You need to build a whole structure around them, it sounds like.
Absolutely, because, just like with me, not having anything, you need everything. You need basically a whole community to surround you. And just like now, when we have our organization, we have our gala, which is coming up September the 26th. We do that to try to help raise money. We also have a freedom walk that's coming up on July 25th. So we do that to just bring awareness to, this issue of wrongful conviction and false imprisonment. No one, and I've talked to people from all backgrounds, no one like to see innocent people go to prison and come home to nothing. And literally, many of us come home to nothing.
If you want more information on that 9th annual gala for the Miracle of Innocence, just go to miracleofinnocence.org. Again, it's going to be on September 26th at Congregation B'nai Yehuda, right?
Yes, right.
Yeah, okay. What tends to be the hardest part of getting reacclimated to life outside of prison?
For me, it's been just constantly trying to prove my innocence. It's almost like everything I do, Steve, every day is some kind of way I have to prove my innocence. And not so much to prove my innocence that I, didn't commit the crime, but just little things like, I'm capable of doing certain things. Just like I said, just like getting a job. It's almost like, no one want to give me a job because they say, we don't believe you can do it. You never done this kind of work. Man, I can lift boxes, Okay, I'm not 20, 25 years old anymore, but I can still lift things. I can still carry things. I don't run as fast. I'm not as strong, but it's not like, I see what people who are elderly, like 75 and 80 years old say, hey, I'm still of some use. I still have value to me. And so it's constantly trying to convince people that, I can do things that otherwise, if I had the chance at 25, I would have been doing these things anyway. So most people who are my age, they either retired or they're about to retire or they have businesses and companies that they start.
Yeah. How many cases are you working on involving people still behind bars that you believe are innocent of the crimes they're in there for?
Right now we have about a half a dozen cases, and there are 4 cases that we believe that have the potential to come home within a few months. And I hate to put jinx on it and say, but
because the legal system is the legal system.
Exactly.
Right?
And it moves at a snail pace, and you think you're about to get some results, and they would snatch it from up under you. But there's a guy Byron case, there's a Larry DeClue, Darlene Shepard, Frank Frank Shepard, Darlene. These are some cases right now we're working on that has the potential to get some results, hopefully this year. And so that's what we're working on right now. We've helped about 4 or 5 people come home already, and we have what's called an exoneree care program where every week we meet with these individuals on Zoom and on telephone, and we talk, and we just have, what's called an exoneree care conversation, and just ask about what your needs are today, or how you're doing, or how you're feeling. It's almost like a AA meeting, so to speak, but we do this every week.
Is there a commonality, or do they tend to ask for the same things over and over from exoneree to exoneree?
Yes, for the most part. I mean, because we all need pretty much the same thing. The one basic thing we all need is some housing, support. We got to have a place to stay. Then there's also
maybe the most important thing.
That's the most important thing. That's number one. Then identification, and we need communication, transportation. These are the things that we just need, just basic things we need. Of course, we need food, clothing, shelter, and housing.
Have you been able to identify certain employers who are inclined to help out people like yourself and give them a chance with a job?
Yes, and and it's great to have the community, like churches and other organizations in the community that connect us with certain employers. There are certain employers, even, Walmart, Home Depot, a lot of these big companies, they do give folks like us a chance, and other companies, big companies, give people like us a chance. And I think the government even have a program for them that if they hire, ex-offenders, then they can get some kind of benefit from the government or some kind of tax write-off or something to that effect.
Well, I'm wondering how you look at the judicial system now with the benefit of hindsight based on your own experience. You mentioned a couple of minutes ago that, the system works so slowly, and so many cases we've talked about here on the show over the years are cases where, this seems to be the person needs to be out, but it doesn't happen month after month after month. What do you make of it, and what's wrong with the system in your view?
Man, the system is designed for, two types of justice. It had justice for those who have and those who have not. That's
Meaning
the
money,
system. Meaning
right.
money.
Yeah.
Money, resources, connections. And that's unfortunate. There are 2 ladies that we're working with right now. One did 44 years wrongfully. The other one did 40 years wrongfully, right here in Missouri, which is unfortunate.
Is Judy Henderson one of those?
That's not Judy. I'm referring to Sandy Hemme.
Okay.
And the other one is Patty Pruitt. But the system, it moves so slow only because you don't have the money and the connections. But when you have money and connections and those kinds of influential people behind you, the system, it speeds up. It's unfortunate. And then if you have a certain demographic, I'm, of course, African American, I'm poor. Then when I say of a demographic, not just African American, but if you're poor, you really don't get the kind of justice that you deserve. It's unfortunate, but that's the system we have. And it's been like that. I don't know if that's going to change.
Daryl, it's been nearly 20 years since you were exonerated, almost 10 years since you co-founded Miracle of Innocence. What changes have you seen in our bi-state region when it comes to support for exonerees? Are lawmakers taking any steps to improve the situation?
Yes, the awareness of us being able to educate the community and get out in the community and talk about what we've been able to do and educate people. There have been some changes even in policy as it relates to compensation. They just passed a bill last year, Missouri, and the governor signed it for compensation for all exonerees. It used to be, Steve, as you know, just for DNA exonerees, but now it's for everybody. So I'm included in that number. I'm still waiting, so hurry up, people.
What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for some compensation from the government.
Why is it taking so long?
Well, it's just got passed, and you have to file a lawyer has to file with the court and go back through the court, and it's a process, another legal process that I'm clueless about. But all I know is the lawyer said they're working on it. Sean O'Brien is one of the lawyers who also has been helping exonerees try to get compensation.
A UMKC law professor,
UMKC
former
law professor.
UMKC law professor.
Sean professor,
done such great work.
Oh, absolutely. He was also working with Cheryl Pilot and Charlie Ross to get me out, and so many others. He's behind the scene, I think, with Lamont as well. But Sean is also trying to help us.
Daryl, you travel all over doing advocacy work. Are there any states that are doing well when it comes to exoneree support? I know some provide financial compensation, but that still doesn't walk them through, finding an apartment or getting a driver's license, that kind of thing.
Well, that's correct. And I want to say Texas is probably one of the models as it relates to exoneree compensation package. They have a really great package. And Kansas just passed one a few years ago as it relates to Lamont. They got that package passed. California do a really good compensation for exonerees in California. They give a huge amount of resources to help individuals in California. And there are a few other states, but by and large, they can give you money, but they can't deal with the loss, man. I've known two friends of mine, they were compensated. They were millionaires, but they still committed suicide. You know, one, in fact, his name was Darrell, just like me. He was in North Carolina. That's where he was exonerated from. But it's the loss, it's all the PTSD that we struggle with. And so the money is one aspect of it, but, man, we need a lot of more support in a lot of other areas, Steve.
PTSD serious, even in your case?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell me about that.
Well, I mean, I struggle. I still have nightmares sometimes. In fact, I just had one last night, literally, where some guys were attacking me. I'm back inside of this prison, and 5 guys were attacking me just last night, and I couldn't get away. And I'm at home by myself. I'm at home alone. My wife, Valerie, is not in town right now. Mm-hmm. And, man, it was a real frightening thing. And what counselors have told me, those are called night terrors. They're a little bit more intense than nightmares. And this just happened last night. And I was so happy, and I'm struggling. I'm fighting these guys, man. And one guy cannot overpower 5 guys.
And that nightmare sort of stays with you all day, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Just sort of slows you down. Hangs on you.
Yes, just like I'm talking to you about it now. This just happened 8 hours ago, when I was asleep, and so early this morning. But it's just the fact that, these are things we have to live with every day. So I know what those guys, when they was thinking, I can't say I was in their mindset when they took their lives. I can understand the loss and the feeling, man, of hopelessness. Even though you have all this other material stuff, you still feel like it's no use out here. We've lost too much.
That was Daryl Burton speaking with our host, Steve Kraske, about the nonprofit Miracle of Innocence.
Yeah. You're still saying there's no profiling, but it is. It is. We're being hunted every day. It's a silent war against African-American people as a whole.
Well, there will be a candlelight vigil tonight to mark 10 years since Philando Castile was shot and killed by a police officer during a traffic stop in Falcon Heights. Castile's killing sparked protests, became a rallying cry for police reform, and led to the first prosecution of a police officer for an on-duty killing in Minnesota history. A jury found the officer not guilty. Our John Collins spoke to Castile's friends and family about coping with grief and Philando's lasting legacy.
The Philando Castile Peace Garden is located on Larpenteur Avenue in the suburb of Falcon Heights. Castile was driving his Oldsmobile on this very street when he saw flashing lights in his rearview mirror. His girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter were in the car.
Yes, sir.
St. Anthony officer Geronimo Yanez asked for Castile's ID. Castile told Yanez, "Sir, I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me." Yanez responded, "Don't reach for it then." Philando Castile said, "I'm not pulling it out." Yanez quickly fired 7 shots into the car, hitting Castile 5 times. His girlfriend, Diamond Reynolds, captured his final moments of life on a Facebook Live video that spread quickly online. Protests erupted almost right away. Valerie Castile is Philando Castile's mother. After his killing, she called for calm and pressed for criminal charges against the officer. When Yanez was acquitted on manslaughter charges by a jury, she gave voice to the community's outrage.
He had one tattoo on his body, and it was of the Twin Cities, the state of Minnesota with TC on it. My son loved this city, and this city killed my son.
Since then, Valerie Castile has worked with prosecutors in both Ramsey and Hennepin counties to help them move away from what are called pretextual stops, like when her son was pulled over for a burned-out taillight.
When these bad things happen, you have to admit that harm was done and move forward in trying to create something that will make a change so that these terrible things won't continue to happen to other people.
Valerie Castile now has 3 grandchildren, including a 2-year-old boy she says carries himself like Philando. She says it's devastating to know he's been gone 10 years.
Philando was one of a kind, sweetheart. He was my son. He was my friend. He was my companion. He was my only child for 10 years. So it was always just he and I.
Ramsey County Attorney John Choi faced some pushback after he decided to file charges against police officer Geronimo Yanez. Choi says he thinks about what happened to Philando Castile every day. The experience changed him as a human and as a prosecutor.
I think a prosecutor here in this community recognizes it is their responsibility and their obligation to seek the truth and investigate the facts and do the hard thing, which is to have accountability and apply the law to anybody, regardless if it's a police officer who was working in the line of duty.
Michelle Phelps, a professor at the University of Minnesota, says Castile's killing set the groundwork for the community response after George Floyd's killing in 2020.
Philando Castile and then the complicated legal trial that followed, I think really was a kind of a pivot moment and a radicalizing moment, and really birthed what became this push for defund and abolition in the Twin Cities that would, of course, hit the national stage in 2020.
Greg Crockett was one of Philando Castile's best friends. A year after the jury released a not guilty verdict for Geronimo Yanez, Crockett left Minnesota for good. He's got a tattoo on his arm of Philando, and sometimes people in Arizona ask about it.
Nobody should know who he is, except for the people that he worked with, his family and his friends. 10 years, man. Like how does 10 years go by in the blink of an eye?
Crockett's hoping to make a quick trip back to Minnesota later this summer. First thing he plans to do is visit the Philando Castile Peace Garden for the very first time. John Collins, NPR News, Falcon Heights.
I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism and white supremacy. The gun is the answer to conscious and or subconscious. The answer, the response to the white collective feeling they can be genetically annihilated by black genetic material. And the gun is a great equalizer. I encourage everybody to get a copy of the ISIS papers and read.
During his race for the White House, President Donald Trump pledged to expand Second Amendment rights nationwide. Now his administration is taking major steps to roll back gun restrictions put into place for public safety. Our Justice correspondent Ali Rogan has more.
Earlier this year, the Justice Department unveiled a major roadmap to reduce regulations on purchasing firearms, arguing the changes would, quote, modernize gun policy. Now the department is also taking more targeted actions, going after Democratic-led states for their own gun restrictions. For more on the Trump administration's efforts to broaden Second Amendment rights, I'm joined now by Chip Brownlee. He's a staff writer at The Trace covering federal gun policy. Chip, thanks so much. Welcome to the NewsHour. I want to ask you first about these rollbacks that the DOJ has announced. What rules and policies would be impacted here?
Yeah, so the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, has proposed a range of rollbacks, about 36 in total. I would say most of the proposals that they have are actually pretty administrative. They update and modernize some of the processes that gun dealers use, but there are a couple of things in there that are pretty significant. One that has gotten a lot of criticism from the gun reform side of things is a rule that was intended to close the gun show loophole. The Trump administration has proposed rolling back that rule. And then there are some other things like reducing regulations on short-barreled rifles and bump stocks being the one of those devices that was used in the Las Vegas mass shooting in 2017. And some of those regulations are actually just bringing things back in line with what the Supreme Court has said in terms of things like the bump stocks. But the big thing is the rule that was intended to close the gun show loophole.
There's another rollback that's caused some controversy, and that is reducing the restrictions on people with mental illness to own a firearm. That's upset some gun safety groups. What kind of risks are involved with that rollback?
Well, the ATF itself actually said that there's a risk that rolling that rule back could result in mass casualty events. I don't know how big of an impact that's going to be, because right now federal law is that if you were involuntarily committed into a psychiatric institution, for example, you would lose your gun rights, and that remains the law. This is kind of clarifying essentially that if you were voluntarily entering yourself into a facility, that wouldn't count. And then some other things about if you have been previously ruled as not able to handle your own affairs, kind of removing some of that stuff. But this is a regulation and a rule that's been back and forth between the Trump administration and going back to the Obama administration. So I don't know that one will have as big of an impact as some people are saying it will.
And I should mention that Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche has disavowed some of the conclusions in that ATF study, saying they really don't indicate there's any increased risk. I also want to ask you about these lawsuits that the Department of Justice is pursuing against bans in the states of California and Virginia against certain types of firearms. What led to those suits?
Yeah, so ever since the Trump administration took over the Department of Justice, they've really kind of refocused the Civil Rights Division to focus on gun rights and enforcing gun rights. This is the same division that was, previously enforcing voting rights and desegregating schools going back to the 1960s. And since last year, the Trump administration has been focused on gun rights. And they brought 7 different lawsuits against jurisdictions across the country. One of them, the most recent one, is against California's handgun roster regulations, which is basically a list of approved handguns that people can buy. And then another regulation in California essentially banning Glocks because there's a piece of a Glock that makes it more kind of susceptible to being outfitted with a switch and turned into a machine gun. And then in Virginia, the Department of Justice has sued the state over its assault weapons ban. And that's one of a number of different lawsuits the department has brought against assault weapons bans, also in Denver and D.C. and some other places as well. I'm not aware of the Civil Rights Division really enforcing gun rights at any point before this. This new section has since brought 7 lawsuits against jurisdictions across the country, so this is really a new thing that we haven't seen before.
And the Supreme Court has said next session they're going to take up 2 cases in which one state and one local assault weapons ban are being discussed. What are the implications if they rule against those bans?
Yeah, so there are about a dozen states across the country that have assault weapons bans, and then some municipalities and local jurisdictions that have them. So if the Supreme Court struck down the assault weapons bans in this case, that would mean that most of those, if not all of those across the country, would also be unconstitutional. The 2 here that the Supreme Court has taken are assault weapons bans in Connecticut and in Cook County, which is Chicago. And those laws have been on the books since the 1990s, and now the Supreme Court is likely going to rule them unconstitutional. This is, again, so you would have a dozen states across the country that could lose their assault weapons bans. A lot of these laws passed in the wake of mass shootings across the country.
Chip Brownlee with The Trace, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The non-white black man, the Jamaican immigrant, as they call him, who was killed in a hunting accident with a group of white people. One of the things that I've always did, especially young folks who kind of still like to party, and I tell my children too, do not go to any functions with a bunch of white people. And if you happen to walk into a place where you are the only black person in there, leave immediately. This is what happens when situations like, the non-white black male gets killed in a hunting accident. He went down with a group of white people, and next thing you know, he's dead.
And this morning, we're focusing on the desperate search for answers in the mysterious death of 18-year-old Nolan Xavier Wells. He didn't return with friends after a 4th of July boat trip to a Mississippi island. Wells' mother reported him missing that very night, but tragically, a few days later, his body was found. Now, there are a lot of questions about what happened to him, and his family is demanding answers. Nolan's parents, Christine and Elmore Wansley, and their attorney, Ben Crump, are joining us now in studio to talk more about this. Thank you both and Attorney Crump for being here under these especially difficult circumstances that no parent ever wants to live through. Christina Nelmore, can you help us understand what your understanding is of the timeline and what questions you both still have about what actually happened to Nolan?
So he basically, the night before, all the boys got together, stayed the night. 4th of July, they launched the boat. They went to the island, and that was that. I was expecting hey, we're back, like he normally does. Didn't happen. Get a phone call around 11, 4th of July. Hey, have you talked to Nolan? And I'm like, no, where is he at? So then my friend Tashima was so helpful in tracking his phone down because everyone was looking at the Snapchat location because all the kids follow each other. But I was looking at Life 360 and I'm like, well, I don't understand because I'm literally looking at his phone like it's at someone's house. So thankfully my friend did go grab the phone for us as we were kind of doing the other part of it, which was notifying, the local authorities, trying to figure out who we needed to speak to do the missing persons report, because I know that needs to be done as soon as possible, especially when we're talking about water. We wanted to make sure that we could try to find him, and that was the goal.
Who called you first initially, and how well do you know the people that Nolan was hanging out with that day? How familiar are you with them and their families? So
their families, we have not met. So Warren was the one who made the phone call, and he did contact the Coast Guard as well, which I know there's some discrepancies now with that. But he did contact them, and I was going back and forth with the Sheriff's Department and the City of Ocean Springs. Who do we talk to? So then it turned into I had to contact DMR. And DMR took the information, but then reverted me back to Ocean Springs Police Department. So it's kind of like, where do we go from here? So Jackson County basically was like, hey, we're gonna take it over. We'll go ahead and do the report.
Well, the mother of one of the boys who was with Nolan apparently posted on social media that Nolan made a decision to stay on the island and then return inland later with another group of friends. Were you made aware of that plan beforehand? Is that something that Nolan would have done or would do often?
No.
No, he wouldn't. Nolan was always taught to stay with the group. If you leave with me, you come back with me. So that I don't understand. And with me being a parent, if I was in that situation, I would have told him, you're going to get back on this boat with me because I don't want to have to answer to your parents if something happens to you.
Right.
So you're going to get on the boat. And if you still don't want to get on the boat, someone give me a phone so I can make a phone call to get your parents on the phone so they can tell you to get on the boat. But at no time will I leave someone else's child especially on the island.
So you think he got left behind then?
Yes. I don't believe he decided to stay on the island by himself. It just doesn't, that's not his character.
Attorney Crump, you have a lot of questions about what happened, ranging from the fact that the police very quickly declared that they didn't see any evidence of foul play, but then said that they were now investigating, to the timeline, the idea of where the phone could potentially be. Help me understand.
Vlad, there are so many glaring contradictions, and that's why so many people all across America are chiming in saying this is not adding up. I mean, you have them saying he was talking to a young lady, and she said that he said, I'm going to get back on the boat with the boys. Well, the boys say he said that, no, I'm going to stay with her. I mean, which is it? And then on top of that, you talk about this video that's out there that shows this apparent argument going on where Nolan says, where's my freaking phone? What are you freaking doing? And then his phone turns up missing. I don't know any 18-year-old, if you go with their story that he said he was going to stay behind, I'm going to leave my cell phone behind. It's not adding up. And so those are the things that his mother and father are saying, we're not accepting this. He was a college athlete. He was in superb shape. And so he's a good swimmer. And you see the video of all those people out there. if he's drowning, nobody's going to help.
But the video that you're talking, sorry, now, the video that you're talking, go ahead.
I was going to say, you reposted that video. Now, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, they are calling for people to send in any videos or anything that they may have seen. What are they communicating with you about the investigation and what they are getting from people?
They haven't communicated much at this point. In fact, his mother, as she said, they had to track down the cell phone, and she can talk about the deleted messages that are very concerning to her because it's relevant. All of it is relevant to finding out how Nolan Wells ended up dead.
Let me ask you really quickly on that video that you posted. Are you sure that that is Nolan's voice that we can hear on the video?
Well, and there are kids. Kids are talking, and kids are always talking that there was an argument. So we have independent investigators doing it, and we're getting an independent autopsy. Colin Kaepernick paid for his body to be flown up to Washington, D.C. from Mississippi because his parents have some distrust when you think about the history of Mississippi.
Oh, yes. And Christine, going back to that cell phone, you said you were able to recover it.
Yes.
So you saw clear signs that there were deleted conversations?
There were definitely concerns just because Nolan is always on Snapchat. He will be like, hey, Mom, smile, you know, put a peace sign. Mm-hmm. So when me and my sister went through it, there was nothing.
There were
no saved videos. There was nothing in there. She went to the secondary account. There was nothing in there. And I know, you know, when kids get together for events like that, you know, they're snapping. They're making videos, taking pictures. And so I'm just like, where is it? Because it hadn't even been 24 hours when we started looking, which usually with Snapchat, it goes away once you hit that 24-hour mark.
Elmore, can you, for all of us who are so concerned about what happened here, just tell us a little bit more about your son. Who was he? What kind of man was he growing up to be?
He was very respected by the community. He was very respected by a lot of people. There wasn't a friend that he couldn't make. People gravitated to Nolan. That was just the type of person he was. He was I would say a silent leader when on the field and on the basketball court. People would follow his actions and not his words. I'm a person, I believe action is more important than words. You can tell me 1,000 times you love me, but show me you love me. Mm-hmm. If you are my real friends and I'm giving you this trust, you need to get it back to me by making me. Yeah. Making me get on that boat. It's 3 of them, one of me. Yeah, we may tussle, but when we get back to the mainland, either we're gonna tussle some more, or we're gonna go party. So, and same with the adult. If that was your child, and I was the one there, you would have wanted me to make your child get back on the boat. So, there was a lot of bad decisions made. I don't think my son volunteered to stay on that island. I can't believe that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you both for being here. We're so sorry about this, and we hope that there is some news that comes out of this investigation. We'll be watching. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Virginia's Henry in Chicago told us, we've heard this one so many times, even, really, I'm going to quote Henry in Chicago. I could have been cold-blooded again and just say, hey, Nolan Wells. Neely Fuller Jr. say, not all white people are racist. Always got space for white friends because not all of them are racist. Try not to be that cold-blooded. I just go back to Henry in Chicago and say, you arrived. They didn't focus on it, but I did investigate as soon as I heard this. Was Nolan Wells the only black person who went out on an island, not just in the woods or to the house, not even just in Mississippi, an island in Mississippi? I hope to God I'm wrong on that. an island in Mississippi, and you're the only black person? Who is informed about racism? Say all the time, you got to talk to your children honestly about racism. Maybe pile up these cases where a black person, only black person with their white friends, because that was Michelle tell us, my white friends, pile up the cases where my white friends, and I was the only non-white person, everybody came home but me. Henry in Chicago, who is a parent, he said, I tell my children, I'm telling you all at the cows, you show up to an event, you show up on an island, and you're the only black person there. He didn't even say turn and walk. He said run. Leave immediately. Immediately. Now, see, you end up on an island. That's like Jim Jones. See, that's, hey, kind of too late because you got to get on a boat to get up. Yeah, buddy. Who is informed about racism? Because it's too late. Too late. They done got your phone too. Too late. You have got to talk to your children. That is a dereliction of duty. You have offspring. You don't talk to them about racism. Like I said, hey, forget all the highfalutin books and technology, or maybe you can't afford Neely Fuller Jr.'s book. Fine, no problem. Maybe you can't afford any books on racism. Fine, no problem. They do have a library, but whatever. Hey, talk to your child about your experience with white people. That's an easy one. All you got to do is sit down, think, and write your school experience, your work experience, your life experience. What's your experience with white people? Then you go get some of these cases, especially you're going to have, oh my Lord. You just get some of these cases, man, because but y'all can watch TV. Don't we love watching TV? Henry in Chicago said, man, it's a case on unsolved mysteries with this exactly. In Kansas, black male, privileged. He's the only, just like Nolan Wells, the only non-white person present. And exactly, conflict breaks out. Nigga, what? And then everybody else, and they say the same thing. Oh man, he decided Nolan said he gonna stay and kick it, he doing other things and hollering at white chicks, rapists, and doing all this, so, hey, whatever, you gonna do your thing, you gonna do your own thing. All right, he got the same thing, and same thing, because the case on Unsolved Mysteries, they weren't on an island, but they were it was one of those like, dang, y'all are 60 miles away, and you're gonna say, the person that I rode out here 60 miles away with, oh no, go ahead, I got it. What? We're on an island? Oh no, y'all got it. I'm cool. Too late. Not all white people are racist. And I keep pulling at my brain computer. It's maybe because the ages aren't that far off in terms of Nolan Wells, Sade Robinson, she was 19. You don't have to be with a group of white people. Sometimes all it takes is one, thinking that one white person is not racist. And in fact, even, let me get the other side with Nolan Wells. He was with a group. Hey, Fuller told you not all white people are racist. You ain't got one white snitch. Even the parents. Not all white people are racist. It's supposed to be one white snitch. Hey, watch that Unsolved Mystery. I'm telling you, you can watch television for Nolan Wells. Go watch TV. Go watch TV. He was the only non-white person present. It was a gang. It wasn't no one or two. It was a gang. It was like dozen. Who we say? The champions of genital mutilation. Oh, man, my fault. That was John Burge, beginning of the week. My fault. The undisputed champions of no snitches. No snitching. No snitching. I like Nolan. Hey! No snitching. Fuller did say by the time white people are 15, they got the racist code. Apparently, they got the no snitching part real early. Under any circumstance, we gonna get our lie straight. We gonna say he stayed on. That's right. Hey, he was trying to holler at a white woman. See, rapists, they'll already know. Okay, we gonna say he stayed on. Okay, back. No snitching. That case on Unsolved Mysteries, I think it's like a quarter century old. Hey, no snitching is still unsolved. Not all white peoples is racist. Not all white. I was supposed to just say Henry in Chicago said, you the only non-white person there, turn and run. You got to tell your young folks, especially summertime, they want to get out and party. I want to go to the island. I said, I know what it is to be Nolan Wells. We went to the lake here in Washington State, and we were about 60 miles outside of Seattle, so it's the exact same kind of circumstances. I think I was the only black person present, but there were lots of other non-white people, victims of white supremacy present. We're at the lake, and they're doing the jet skis and all that stuff. I can swim. Water safety for sure. Lots of drownings. Water safety, especially if you have black children. They're doing the jet skis and all that. I said, man, I want to go do some jet skiing and jump on. Man, let me get a turn. And I stopped and I said, wait a minute. Because the white people, of course, they're operating the jet skis and all. And at the exact moment that I was thinking, this popped in my brain computer, one of the victims, see, it wasn't all white people, so this wasn't a run scenario. There were other victims. One of the victims of white supremacy said, do you trust the white boat operator with your life? If I had not been thinking that, brilliant, that would have been enough to jog some sense into my peanut head brain. Whoa. I'm going to sit back down on this land. Woo. I'm going to pray and hope we get some black people who hit the lotto or whatever it is. They get some jet skis, and we're going to do it up tough, safe. But we're going to do it up tough. I'm going to sit out this one. No, thank you, sick white brother. I'm going to sit down. Thank you. Make great, you see, young people, they will make good decisions, especially if you have been fooled into thinking not all white people are racist. And I'm going to keep saying that one because since this was a group of white people, there should have been one non-racist white parent, at least one non-racist white child who hadn't been contaminated. Say, hey, whoa, we can't do that to Nolan. Wait a minute, what's going on here? Or you at least got the snitch on the other end. I ain't with all this. I'm going to tell as soon as we get back. That didn't happen. I even say, hey, find the non-racist white person in this event. Do it for, hey, what Gus T say? Everybody want to sit around and be TV. I'll help you. Do a FOIA request on this one. Mississippi Police Department. Get all the information. Find the non-racist white person here. Somebody should snitch, right? I would gladly help. Anytime. This infinite same way. Any of you lame, non-literate, pretend literate, semi-literate, illiterates who need to defend Michelle Alexander for life, bring your ass. Sorry, still upset about that. But constructively, anybody who needs help, if you need to file a FOIA for Mississippi, Nolan Wells, let's find the non-racist white person. For infinity, I would gladly help. Not all white people is racist. Let's look for that needle in the haystack. Metaphor, context of white supremacy, Gus T. Renegade, the worthless, cold-blooded Negro from Virginia. In for another broadcast, hopefully constructive for non-white people, maybe to get us think twice. Do I really need my child to think? Not all white people are racist. Is that going to be the best for the health and well-being, safety of my Sade Robinson, my Nolan Wells? Today's date, Saturday, July 11, 2026. So I have been told. A young lady who dialed in yesterday for workplace racism. We were doing the Catherine Massey book club, but she had workplace racism. Floor is yours. I just want to make sure I get in. One, we should be here on Wednesday. White man, COINTELPRO. You heard the segment about the FOIA requests. We should be here Wednesday. This is Wednesday. This is a reschedule. Super looking forward to it. Generally, I get very excited anytime because he rescheduled. I was almost done reading his book anyway. Gave me more time. My plan was to go sit out at the beach and finish the book today and tomorrow. I got so ahead of schedule with my reading, I don't even really have nothing to read at the beach. So I can just go out and lollygag, talk to the young ladies, look at the water, look for the seals or the sea lions or whatever. I don't even have no reading to do, but I can still go to the beach. But we will be here on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. White guests only. I'm so excited. COINTELPRO and white guests. So excited. 2, invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Listener-supported counter-racist radio. 17 uninterrupted years of counter-racist radio. In fact, what have we done in our 17 years? That segment from Mr. Daryl Burton, privileged black male who was wrongly convicted, served all those decades in prison. He said the PTSD, he talked about his night terrors. He said at the end that there are black males who got compensated for their unjust incarceration, got millions of dollars, and they still committed suicide. He said one of them, Daryl in North Carolina, he said Daryl like me. That was Daryl Burton that we were hearing from in the Kansas City region. He said, but there was Daryl in North Carolina. He was a millionaire and he still committed suicide because of the trauma of being incarcerated. That's Daryl Hunt, privileged black male, and we did discuss his case on the context of white supremacy in our 17-year history. Of course, it is a racist suspect white woman, Phoebe Zerwick, who wrote a book about Mr. Hunt and what happened to him, but you can go back. It's in the archives. Summertime 2023. That's when she was a guest on the program. I just shared the link. It's Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Podbay, Podchaser, wherever you get your great podcasts from. C.O.W.S should be there, but Phoebe Zerwick, suspected racist, Daryl Hunt, and his suicide after being wrongly convicted of raping a white woman. But that's one of the things that we've talked about in our 17-year uninterrupted history. Hopefully we've been more accurate than not and constructive with our content. Invest, hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button is at the top right corner. You'll see the links directly beneath for PayPal, Cash App, and Venmo. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who kept us on the air those 17 years. For folks who follow on social media, Gus T has been doing, just for this year, my homage to the late privileged black male Kobe Bryant, and I've been doing the big balls dance, also Welsing moment, Dr. Welsing. When I get constructive information, my multi-front counter racist forensic audit and gathering details like Dr. Welsing's FBI files for your request. I was able to do the big balls dance this week. I explained I only break that out similar to the watermelon dance when you get something really constructive revelation of truth, information that white people have tried to or have successfully hidden from us, information that is so important it should be shared, maybe even worthy of information, a whole program just about this information, even if it's just Gus T just talking about this info. That would be the case for the documents that I got this week. I think on that list now for this year would be Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's FBI files, the first portion of the late Johnny Cochran's FBI files related to Darrell Hunt, the first portion of Neely Fuller Jr.'s employee personnel record, the first portion of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing's employee personnel record, and the first portion of Gregory Johnson's FBI file. If people don't know who Gregory Johnson is, for Nolan Wells, Gregory Johnson was at a white fraternity party in California and suspiciously ended up dying, found hung to death suspiciously. I didn't even get the full FBI file, and even that is a source of controversy, but the partial file that I got, even that is revealing. That's why I said everyone should be filing FOIA requests. White people lie and hide lots of information. But the Dr. Welsing employee files, I just got those this week. I said that should be worthy of a program of itself. It is, but instead of that, now what I'm doing, because I had been reading Neely Fuller Jr.'s, I just picked different pieces of Mr. Fuller's employee personnel file and read them on neutralizing workplace racism. We already have a format for that. So I just pick a portion and read a little bit every week. It's so massive, this could go on for a while. Same is true for Dr. Welsing, so now I can just alternate week to week, and so each week we'll just take a little pause and read a little bit from their files. Most of it is so impressive for both of them, like exactly what you would think, like, wow, their employee personnel record is, I don't even know of what you would dream of, but like the best of the best. If you could think that people just had the best possible things to say about you, like if you could imagine like a perfect employee review where you are just a model worker and a beacon of competence and punctuality, courteousness, professionalism, respected by all. That's what it is for just pages and pages and pages and pages. The only difference that I would note at this point, and again, it is partial files, but the only notice that I would give at this point is that racism pops up in Dr. Welsing's employee record much more than Mr. Fuller's. If I just, my initial judgment from the first 100 pages or so approximately, racism was more of a problem for Dr. Welsing employment-wise than Mr. Fuller. But I mean, that's self-evident, right? Because she did get fired at Howard, so duh. But beyond all that, it seems racism was a greater problem for Dr. Welsing on the job than Mr. Fuller, from what I have thus far. Now, maybe once I get the rest of it, I'll have to update, but I'll read as we go. Fascinating bits of intelligence. Again, we should be very curious about lots of things. One correction, then I'll see if our young lady, workplace racism, correction, when we spoke with Andrew Bayer, racist suspect, about John Burge in Chicago, I gave the incorrect name. It's James Gibson. I said Joseph Gibson. James Gibson, privileged black male, who they wrongly convicted him. He had to serve decades in prison in Illinois. They didn't even beat him. They just lied and said that he confessed in all of this, which wasn't even true, didn't have no signed documents, no recordings, nothing. Just said that the Negro did all this and then confessed to it, and 25 years later, whoops, I guess he didn't do it. And that also means we didn't even get the correct person who did this. Nope. System of White Supremacy. But correct name, James Gibson, at least after all that, and you can get the name correct. Let's see. Well, young lady, if you have commented, and I guess other folks, if you have workplace racism, that is always welcome, for sure. Let's see. Our young lady, let me get our switchboard. Had my notes up. We'll let her give us the workplace racism details, and then I can get my notes from the audio segments that we heard today. Let's see. Totally threw the switchboard away. How wacky, because I was getting my notes and checking for other things. Let's see. There we go. All righty. All righty. Much obliged. Thank you for being patient. She dialed in yesterday. We were doing our debut session on Robert and Mabel Williams' memoir, and my brain computer doesn't work well enough to hop back and forth between the two. So I told her we would go right to her right at the beginning. Right on. The floor is yours, ma'am. Proceed.
Hi, Gus. Good evening, callers and listeners. May I be heard?
Crystal clear. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry if I sound kind of bad. I'm a little sick. I just wanted to first comment regarding the young man who drowned, I'm assuming in quotation marks. And we've always, I grew up in the country, and, my parents would always, instill in us to never, go anywhere being the only, black non-white person. And I know I had an uncle who, dealt with a lot of Caucasian people, and I think there was an instance where he, the only non-white, went jet skiing, and I can just remember, my mom and my grandma being so, upset about him doing that. Luckily, he did make it back, alive, but we've always, where I grew up in the country, we were always taught never be the only non-white in a group. And I know they have a independent autopsy that's pending, so hopefully they're able to get some answers. And I just wanted to just call in and try to be brief regarding workplace racism. If you recall, well, first I have a question. Do you think that us as victims of racism, white supremacy, do you think it's appropriate to use the tools such as the EEOC to help resolve our specific issues, even though we know that the odds are stacked against us? But in your opinion, should we use that? And once I get your answer, then I'll give you the information about my racism situation.
My view, yes, ma'am. I would say use anything. I think certainly over the years there's lots of evidence, and even especially now with the current U.S. President, Donald Trump, that I would have correct expectations. Like, I wouldn't think that they're just because you filed this that you're going to win and you're going to get millions of dollars and back pay and all the rest of it. Not at all. You can file that. You can do that and use a myriad of other strategies. That could be in conjunction with whatever else you're doing. If that's going to be seeking an attorney, or what Mr. Fuller's recommended about pursuing this as a violation of your constitutional rights in the workplace, you could do this in conjunction with all of that. But sure, the worst they can say is no, which, you're in the same boat that you were in anyway. Forgive the metaphor.
Correct. That's okay. Well, then I feel like I'm on the right path, but I just don't want to feel like I'm one of these people that's always escalating things. So if you recall the last time I spoke with you, I told you that I had an external opportunity, and magically that opportunity disappeared. I got the offer, and a couple days later, it was rescinded. And I don't know, I've called in before in the past, and this organization, and maybe I should have never applied, but the organization I had worked for, I did have a non-disciplinary termination on file, and it was strictly due to me requesting like some accommodations due to disability. And it ultimately resulted, unfortunately, with an attorney being involved, the organization trying to basically get me to sign a release for payment in order to not sue them. I negotiated and didn't get what I wanted, and they hired me back about a month later in a different position. So as you know, I should have known better, Gus. I applied to this organization again, and as I told you, my offer, as soon as it got to HR, it was rescinded. And the same key players who were in my case situation from, 6-7 years ago, they are now over the human resources. So what they did, I sat and I waited patiently because they rescinded it under a reorganization, supposedly. And so I was like, okay. And so I waited and waited, and what they did was they reposted the role. However, they changed the title and kept the core functions of the job as the exact thing I applied for in January. And so I said, well, you know what? Chances, like you said, you're not in any worse shape than you were. Apply again. And so I did that. Ultimately, I applied, never heard from the hiring manager anymore. And so I said, I'm going to email her. Emailed her. It took her about 3 weeks to respond, and they called me in for an interview earlier last month. And like I said, I knew it was going to be BS, but, I said, well, I've got a pretty good paper trail here of what happened, of being, having a job, having an offer, having it rescinded. So lo and behold, I interviewed on the 2nd, earlier in the month. And then, they were like, we're going to make a decision by whatever next week or the end of the next week. It never happened. And then I just followed up just as a courtesy. In all my emails, I'm very respectful. And the person was like, well, we're going to make a decision pretty soon. And so yesterday, I got a call from the same hiring manager who hired me in January. And she's like, well, we're sorry. We decided to go with another, candidate. And I was very respectful. I said, thank you for calling me. And, they do the corporate sign off. And so I am considering highly filing just with the EEOC kind of regarding this matter. Because like I said, in my opinion, I'm not an attorney. It's under a pretextual situation of what happened about 7 years ago. And my assumption is as soon as it went to human resources and they saw my name and they recalled the institutional history is why my offer was pulled. And obviously there wasn't a reorg because they reposted it, but under just a different name, but same job functions. And my experience actually matches this like perfectly because I do exactly what the description requires. So I just wanted to share that with you. And I did find out, and for other victims who are listening, I just wanted to make sure that that organization that I worked for wasn't like speaking ill or negative of me. So after the first rejection in January, I contacted, there's a company that you can get to kind of see what other employers are saying about you. And basically they just call them kind of as like a recruiter or a potential employer to kind of see what information they're giving. And so luckily it checked out in that aspect. But I just wanted to share my story with you on what happened and, how these organizations are sneaky. And obviously, like I said, maybe I shouldn't have applied, but I saw it as, an opportunity It was more money. I had the exact experience, but yeah, I do plan on filing an EEOC, but like I said, I'm waiting a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to do just an open records request. But I have pretty much, you know, the settlement, communications between the attorneys. I have all that information that I've kept for like 7 years, but I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you for listening.
Interesting. I guess she had shared previously, it had been some months back, but she did share with us previously about getting this job offer and then having it rescinded, and if, you know, there were some racist shenanigans by her white supervisor who's been doing all this incorrect behavior we've talked about for a long time, or maybe folks in HR and saying that this is likely to happen. Unjust networking is very common in the workplace, in the system of white supremacy in general. And so we talked about this back then. Now we have more, I guess, information, more context around the white people and why this may have happened, other white people who may have been involved in all of this. I don't think there's anything incorrect about filing an EEOC complaint report or applying for this job. Even it sounds like you were very informed in advance, like, okay, these are the same folks, and, you know, from everything that happened previously with you having to get an attorney and, you know, go to have this major, at least legal conflict about all of this in the workplace. It sounds like you were honest with yourself in applying and still said, hey, it's more money. Enough said. I already, you know, have the credentials. I'm competent to hold this position. They awarded it to me before, so they thought I was qualified enough to take this job previously. It's more money. Why not apply? The worst they can, at worst, I'm right back where I was before. No penalty, I don't think. She said she was courteous. She didn't curse the folks out, you know, when she didn't get the job. She said I was professional, courteous once they called and all that. So I don't see anything incorrect about that. And then in terms of filing the EEOC complaint, I mean, hey, that you have documentation, what have you. I think, unless I've been misinformed, you might be able to go to court, and with all of your paperwork, you have an attorney, you might be able to prove that this is a form of retaliation for your previous conflict, legal dispute about the workplace situation. You might be able to prove all of that in terms of this is what happened before. I got the job. It's rescinded mysteriously. They basically offer the same job with a few different words in the description, and then I don't get the job. I don't think this is a case of, you know, changing business dynamics. I think this is a case of retaliation for what happened before. They might say, well, you know, the problem, or I guess the obstacle might be trying to get to prove to white people, likely, if that's the case, why did they hire you to begin with the first time around before they rescinded the job, which you talked about before. You think even maybe some of your white people that you work with currently may have been involved, the HR department, which they found out, like, what, this nigga woman is trying to, because we talked about many times over, the white fella that she works with, he didn't even want her to get a new office. This is not, I'm going to work for a different company or anything like that. I just want to get a different office so I don't have this lecherous, aspiring rapist white man leaving notes and coming and being harassing and abusive. Just, you know, can I? No. That's my nigga woman. You stay right there. No, you can't do that. We talked about this before. So if that's the conduct that they exert on a direct level, what is it going to be? Is she's going to get a new job? Like, she might be able to prove that with all of that documentation. Might be able to do that. But I think as long as you're honest, like it's Mr. Fuller, all of us have noted, it is, and even the time, these cases generally are not, I think you have some experience, these cases are generally not something that are resolved in weeks, months. Sometimes they take years. Frequently that is a part of the strategy, that they'll just, hey, we'll keep this thing tied up in court for 4 or 5 years and just wear them down with paperwork and delays and all the rest of it, and they'll just lose interest. So being truthful, if you're really, I'm prepared to be in this for the long haul. And then also being truthful, hey, the way you heard some of that in the audio clips, the Civil Rights Division that used to be about voting and school, now they're about getting guns for white people. So just being very honest, like, hey, I'm not going in with expectations that I'm going to get $1 billion and this is going to be a super easy win for me. That, man, generally it is very difficult for victims of white supremacy to win these sort of cases. So I won't go in thinking that there's anything, that special. And we are still in a system of white supremacy racism. So even if you do everything perfect, they could just practice racism. Happens all the time. So I think as long as you're
right.
Happy. I mean,
I think I was gonna say you're right, and I guess my only reason why I think that I may have a better chance is because this same organization tried to offer me a couple thousands of dollars to settle in advance. And as I said before, I had an attorney at the time who was negotiating, and they couldn't come up to the amount that I would feel that would be necessary for me to move on. And so that's whenever they basically hired me back, like within a few weeks, just in a different position. But I feel like I'm necessarily, I actually have a situation with another government entity, and with that, I was able to get a letter of finding, and that is currently in the VCA voluntary conciliation process. So, it's like, and this one took a long time too. I just don't want to get off like, oh, I'm just looking to sue people and, profit from it. Because, I've had this situation and a situation in the past, but I feel like I may be hopeful in maybe getting a settlement, but, I'm not counting on it. But as I said, I'm going to let the dust settle a little bit, kind of, let them kind of think that, okay, she went away, and then I'm going to, I have my documents, and I'm going to request the open records for, like, the applicants and the scoring and the, what protocol they used, and to see who was selected. But that's all I'll share. I don't want to take up too much longer, but just wanted to add that detail. And again, thank you for letting me call in and update you and everyone kind of regarding what's going on.
Much obliged. Maybe you can let us know how things go if you have any tips that would be helpful for folks who pursue legal recourse for these types, because it's very common. That would be grand, particularly if you are successful. Maybe you should write a book, counter-racist book with regards to labor, in terms of what happened and why you think your situation worked out in your favor. If that, if that ends up happening, hoping, if that happens, like, man, we need more of those types of resources. So yeah, maybe you can keep us updated. And then, if you are successful, write a book. So we'll have a catalog kind of documentation, what served you well through this whole process. Definitely the open records request, like, man, that's something for lots of folks. You can find out exactly what criterion was used, the scoring, as she said, the selection process, all of that, super important. That's why I said we should be curious following those FOIA requests. We should be curious about, because white people generally go through so much trouble to hide that sort of information, so that we'll just, oh, it was me. Rats, I didn't dress correctly, or I didn't speak correctly, or I'm ignorant. No, they just practiced racism. You probably had, 5 times better scores than all the other candidates. In fact, they can't, oh, that's their nephew. Like, practice racism. But yes, keep us updated. We will be hoping the best for your legal situation. And sounds like she's being honest with herself about things. That is easily one of the most important, being honest with yourself as you go through this whole process in the workplace. And that even if you do things perfectly, they can still practice racism. And she included the Nolan Wells and saying that her family got great anecdote at the beginning. Apparently, some folks did have at least great counter-racist logic on that front. You're not supposed to be going out on those ski trip with the white people by yourself. Like, what are you thinking? Are you thinking? She said thankfully he did make it back safely, but man, that should be very common. Like, at least putting the idea, like, wait a minute, you're going to go do what? Because it's not like it's just one or two of these. It's lots of cases of these. Young people, older people, lots of these cases where we went out on a hunting trip, we went out on a vacation, we went out on the yoga retreat, and what? Lakeisha ain't here no more? Oh, well. And everybody's like, what? Very, very, very common. Tragically common. We got a sound clip. That's all. We got a sound clip for it. That's all you need to know. Tell your choice. And it's bunches of it's older black people too, for sure, but younger black people, like teens and children, man, talk to your children about racism. Imperative. I cannot say that enough. Man, who is more informed about racism? White supremacy. Apparently, all of those individuals classified as white who were kicking it with Nolan Wells, parents, children, all of them, hey, none of them are confused about white supremacy racism. They all got it. Either this wouldn't have happened or we wouldn't have all this confusion about what happened. Let's see, some of the news reports that we heard. The great Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, COINTELPRO victim since age 19. She told us, oh my goodness, it is about, 13 years almost to the date in the verdict in the Trayvon Martin murder trial. Dr. Welsing was with us approximately 7 days after that verdict, and that's where she talked about, because cannabis came up in that trial, that's where she said, hey, all this recreational cannabis is a joke, and she said, you don't know what's in it. Now in the UK, man, they done won in the FIFA tournament today. I think they're in the Final Four, right? Thank God that's not going to be here in Seattle. Like, praise white Jesus. Them wankers, they going to be huffing all the wacky tobacco and reefer across London, Tottenham this eat. Like, man, I'm so glad I'm not over there. But they said they got the super reefer. They got the one for that. Whoa, 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 whoa. Before Big Ben and all the rest of it. Like, whoa, whoa. Make sure you watch out for, we got the super wacky tobacco. You will lose your mind. What? Wait a minute. How is this in a system? And it really, that's one of them. Man, we used to do that. That's back of the bus and Gus, all the way back to the beginning, the very beginning of the cows in the summer of 2007. We used to do that all the time. Like, it's nothing even else to say in a system of white supremacy, racism, and just fade out. Why do we need super duper wacky tobacco that white people got to warn other white people about this Why do we need that in the context of white supremacy racism? Rhetorical question. I cannot imagine what the constructive answer is. Let's see. The FOIA requests. They spoke with Ian Head, who is a white man, Center for Constitutional Rights. We talked about they don't even respond sometimes, and they cut the staff down, so the requests take years and aren't even relevant. Buddy, in fact, I might even bring this up on Wednesday. We'll have to see, like, this might have immediate relevance. But in fact, when we had Dr. Kenneth O'Reilly on to talk about Dr. Welsing and the FBI files, the first set of files that I got on her before I had the records about them snooping on her at age 19, he said it took 4 years for them to fulfill his FOIA request. Now, that was years ago, before you could even do it online. You're telling me it's slower now because they're cutting staff. That's part of the Doge, right? We got all this bloat and unnecessary federal folks in here and doing it. So they're cutting FOIA staff, so now you have fewer people to do more, and then all the redactions, deletions. We just started reading the memoirs of Robert and Mabel Williams. Catherine Massey Book Club did our first session yesterday. Amazing. We just read 2 chapters in the preface. Amazing. Biography kings. But I started looking at some of the newspaper clippings and such, doing my research as I normally do for the book club, and they have some of the COINTELPRO FBI files on Robert F. Williams, and I mean, that's a massive stack of documents going back to the 50s. But they are so heavily redacted. And what I mean, sometimes it seems like the entire page is just blacked out. It'll maybe like one sentence. Robert F. Williams, Monroe, North Carolina, and then everything else is redacted. And it's national security. I told you, with Dr. Welsing, I told you they got minimal, for when I got her actual file, they had minimal redactions for the most part. Generally, about the only things that they blacked out were the informants' names and I think their address. But other than that, they didn't really redact too much from that. In fact, they did so little redacting. I complained. I said, dang, they didn't even redact her social security number. Like, I don't think, because I mean, hey, that's a public record, right? Anybody could get that. I don't think you should be able to get, people's social security number, even if they are deceased. Like, people do fraud and all kinds of things of that nature. So, man, but because they did not redact it, that was the key I needed to get her employee personnel record. So, man. But I mean, they do lots to conceal information people classified as white to make it so that it's difficult to get that file that, oh man, white people at FBI, J. Edgar Hoover been snooping on Dr. Welsing since she was 19. They make it difficult to get that information. Gregory, his family talking about that. You don't know who Gregory Johnson is. That's an easy one. Nolan, you can go watch Unsolved Mystery. I think it's Aaron Brooks. Alonzo Brooks. I think that's it. I'm going to double check and see if that's it. Alonzo Brooks. Unsolved Mystery. I think that might be it. I think that's it. Alonzo Brooks. Thank you. Memory's not too bad. Thank you. Not to celebrate privileged black male who is deceased, but 2004. It's been over 20 years. No snitching. That would be enough. Oh, I was talking about Gregory Johnson. His family in the Gregory Johnson case, if you don't know about that case, do your research. You can even go to my blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. Gus T wrote about it. Since I got his FBI file, I guess I should update that now because I am way more informed. Yikes. But that case, his family complained for years that they were not able to get the full FBI file, and the reason, they were told national security. I didn't know Gregory Johnson worked for the CIA, FBI, Secret Service, NSA, like what? The Department of Homeland Security, like what? I thought he was just a college student. How is this a matter of national security? They do that sort of thing all the time. Now, some people did speculate. Who are the relatives of these frat members? Excellent question. But they do use that as an excuse all the time to redact any and everything. Whole pages just blacked out, blacked out, blacked out, blacked out, blacked out. Like, come on, especially for some of these records because they're older. Robert F. Williams, he's been deceased for over 25 years, so we're talking about very old records, like all of your spies and informants from the 1950s. They're probably deceased now. We're certainly not going to the old folks' home to kick Jell-O out of their hand. Let's get these records unredacted. Like, what are you talking about? Let's see. The segment on related in Milwaukee. So they already had one officer who's been prosecuted for illegal use of the license plate reader cameras. He was checking different females. One of the officers who was investigating him now charged with criminal use of the license plate reading cameras. Like, and this is a black male this time, who has been charged to Grungy Chapman, 51-year-old black male. But I was in Milwaukee last summer, May and June. Man, I was at City Hall for the meeting, packed, where they talked about racism, facial recognition cameras, and the potential for abuse like this. And I had this on my calendar before I got to Wisconsin. I'm going to that meeting. It was mostly white people at the meeting with signs calling it racist to have all these cameras. That did not convince me. Hey, Fuller was right on that one. Not all white people is racist. That is not what I concluded at all. But they were there, for sure. They got video and everything of their sign. They had water bottles because it was summertime. You want to be hydrated. But they were there. They were prepared and in great numbers. That, because they were in great numbers, just like Nolan Wells' companions. But they had signs talking about the facial recognition cameras and racism. Let's see. And they got that on video. I got the audio in the archive so you can listen, but they do have video so you can see them. You can see their signs and numbers. Let's see. They had my beloved Washington State. They had the program talking about the history of white supremacy, racism, and housing, and all the racist covenants that they have here. They said 80,000, 80K restricted properties here in the Washington State area. Probably more than that, but whatever. 80,000. They said 1,500 black people have been able to participate in this program. That discrepancy alone, just 80,000, 1,500. Anyway, one of the 1,500 folks who've been able to participate in this program, Tiara Cato, she is very pretty, very pregnant. She has her little girl with her, lovely. But she said she was able to use this program. She got a house in Tacoma. I'm not hating at all. I'm just saying a house in Tacoma is not a house in Seattle. Now, you can look for yourself in terms of now, what is the price average, median household difference between Tacoma and Seattle? I bet you it's substantial. But I mean, if they're really, we gonna make you whole, we gonna do right about this. Like, hey, they got nice properties in Tacoma, but I mean, hey, do it up. Mercer Island, Bellevue, like, do it. Get me one of them Jimmy's out there next to Richmond Beach. Like, do it. Don't be putting me out here in Tacoma. Again, I'm not hating on Tacoma. Pierce County, we were just talking about. I'm not hating on Tacoma at all. The Seattle Seahawks played in Tacoma. The Seattle Supersonics played in Tacoma. Hey, the airport is SeaTac. Seattle, Tacoma. I'm not hating at all, but I'm just, hey, it is a big difference. You live in Tacoma, and you got to trek down 30 minutes if you want to go to the Seahawks game. You live in Capitol Hill, Green Lake, Central District, Mercer Island, Bellevue. That's not 30 minutes to go to the Seahawks game. Matter of fact, you could catch the train to go to the Seahawks game from any of those locations. Now, true enough, I think within a few years they will have the bullet train, so you will be able to get from Tacoma to Seattle in 30 minutes. But that ain't right now, and even then, house in Tacoma is not a house in Seattle. Might even be a project. Where did they have more? See, that would be another one. Where have they had more racial covenants? Seattle or Tacoma? If they had more in Seattle, it's for sure. Disproportionately, we're going to funnel black people back into Seattle to compensate for what we did. That should be what it looks like. And like I said, give me one of them Jimmy's on Green Lake. Like, yes, we are coming on. We are doing. Then you can invite Gus T over. Say, we do a little yoga outside. Or the boy, that's, never mind. We get to the, oh, wait a minute, before we move down, the people that they got to challenge the WSHFC, Covenant Home Ownership Program, they got, what is her name? There we go, Monica Harris. There we go. Fair for all. Oh my God. I got to pause. We got to pause right here. Fair for all. That word, F-A-I-R. Fair for all. Monica Harris, black female. She's the executive director that they got, allegedly the executive director that they got to challenge that this is not right, that this program, the Covenant Home Ownership Program, that this is wrong. If you're just going to look out for old pregnant Tierra Tato and not look out for white people, oh man, this is racist and we can't have it. They got a black female, Monica Harris. Now, the first thing I thought with this was, this reminds me of the black male in California who led the fight against so-called affirmative action and saying that it's racist and it messes over white people. They got a black dude to lead, a black male who's married to a white woman to lead the fight against affirmative action. Racial showcasing all the way. This is not white people. This is black people who think it's racist and bad. Yeah, same type of thing. So they get a black female. So I look and say, hey, is it the same dynamic? Is Monica Harris? Is she married to a white man? And immediately the evidence comes back, no, she's not married to a white man. Now my brain computer was already, is she married to a white woman? Bingo! Cowbell. I read online, apparently she's done interviews and talked about all of this for a long time. This is a black female who identifies as LGBTQ with a so-called white partner where they moved to Big Fork, Montana. The racial demographics of Big Fork, Montana, 84% white. 0.2, not 2, 0.2% white. That's where she moved to with her partner. She wrote, this is in the Princeton Alumni Weekly. She's a graduate of Princeton, Miss Harris. This is a report about her. It reads, she is black, a woman, lesbian, and the mother of a biracial child, whatever that. Oh, Mr. Fuller recommends not using that word. Confusion. There's one race. More than a decade ago, after a successful career as a Hollywood entertainer, lawyer, Harris and her partner decided to quit the rat race and move their family to Big Fork, Montana. Here I am, raising a biracial son, here we go, that word again, whatever that means, in Montana, who wants to stop talking about race, Harris recounts. But in Hollywood, with all my white peers, that's all they wanted to talk about. Who is more informed about racism? Even that the white people that are supposedly ignorant about racism, all they want to do is talk about racism. The black person, not only do I not want to talk about racism, so my solution is to move to Big Fork, Montana with my lesbian partner and biracial child, and I fight to see that other black people stop talking about racism. Worthy of great pity, and I would again submit, it seems like this is a part of the racist strategy code book, that anytime that we want to sabotage or destroy a program that in some feeble way attempts to compensate or work against racism, we will form another organization and get a black person to lead it, racial showcasing, and have them viciously attack whatever they're doing and see if they can tear the whole thing down. And then they won't be able to say that it was racist and white people did it because it was, oh, no, see, that was your black sister in Fair. That was old Monica Harris who told you that it was racist what y'all were doing, leaving white people out of this housing agreement. White people something, see? So they had the report about the Haitians and the temporary protected status. The Supreme Court justice is saying that President Trump was not racist and that he has the power to do this. They said they didn't think it was overtly racist. That word overtly, I don't know what that means. What is overtly? It was covertly? What do you, man, they will hurt your head. They will hurt your head. I would have to look at the whole decision of all of this, but apparently they're trying, unless you like say niggers or I hate them because they're black or something of that nature, you pretty much can say anything. I don't think he's quite racist. You'll get enough white people to get you, generally speaking, you'll get enough white people, they will agree. We don't indict other white people for being racist ever. Doesn't matter what they said. Black male privilege. Marshawn Nealon. Remember him? Nope. Okay. Dallas Cowboys. The pro football. I know it's off season, so who cares? But the tackle football, not the soccer football, the tackle football that they just play here. Marshawn Nealon, 24-year-old black male, played for the Dallas Cowboys just this past season, the last NFL game that he ever played. He scored a touchdown. He's a defensive player, so that's a big deal because they don't have the ball. But he scored a touchdown literally hours later, same week. Self-inflicted gunshot wound, takes his own life. We find out all these months later, hadn't even been a full year, stage 1 CTE, brain damage. He was 24. He hadn't played pro football for, 10 years. 7 years. He was 24. Stage 1 CTE. That fool Gus T. man said, hey, don't let your black sons watch all that Super Bowl and they play the video games and be on the tackle football. Hey, your brain computer is way more important than a touchdown. Marshawn Nealon, he got that touchdown and then he left us. 24 years old, stage 1 CTE. Now, the other bit of news that should be put together with all of this and why, hey, you're classified as black, we're done with football. We're done with football. Hey, I'm in a city where we won the Super Bowl, and second time since the Cow's been on the air, we won the Super Bowl. Both times, Gus T., we were broadcasting live and talked to Dr. Welsing when we could have went back to back. Gus T. wasn't on back to back. We fit the rebound. Gus T. was talking to Dr. Welsing. We did a 4-hour program that was simultaneous with the Super Bowl with the Seahawks. Broadcasted through their win this year. So I'll stand by my record. Hey, no, and the year the Eagles lost the Super Bowl to the Kansas City Chiefs, 2023, we had Dr. Wallace as a guest on the program, Alabama. She was connected to Jalen Hurts that way, but she talked to us for the full broadcast. Hey, black people are less informed about CTE. Black people like Marshawn Lynch and his parents are less informed about concussions. That's what we talked about. I'll make sure to go back and post that program with Dr. Wallace, as she was so disappointed about Jalen Hurts. And we asked her, we said, dang, you're a white woman, you have all this information, and you still watch football? You still think black people should play football? She said, oh, I love me some football. Y'all done messed up my Super Bowl viewing. Come on. Oh, whoa. I said what it should be put together. So take what I just said, really all of that, black people being less informed, but Marshawn Nealon, stage 1 CTE, 24 years old. The other report that came out this week about brain damage and tackle football, massive study. This wasn't a 1 year. They went back over decades studying tackle football players in the NFL. Tackle football players who have played one NFL game. Say that again slow. Tackle football players who have played one NFL game are 4 times more likely to die from brain damage than the population who does not play tackle football. One NFL game, 4 times more likely to die from some form of neurological damage. This was even more glaring because the study also showed all other health spectrums. NFL athletes are less likely to die than the general population. On all other health spectrums, these are extraordinary athletes, phenomenal genetics, physical abilities. All of those gifts show up as a difference from the general population for the rest of their life in every category except one: the brain computer. Everything not related to the brain, tackle football professional NFL athletes have better health than the general population, are less likely to die, except the brain, and it's if you have played one NFL game, you are 4 times more likely to die from some sort of neurological issue, and it is corrosive, meaning the more games, or debilitating, the more NFL games you play, the risk just keeps going up and up and up. And then you put that back down with Marshawn Nealon was 24 years old, stage 1 CTE. How many more generations of privileged black males do we need to have brain damage for our entertainment? They don't have better things to do with their time. Don't you think they need their brain computer? Wouldn't it be better to have Marshawn Nealon here? He could help us replace white supremacy with justice, even if he doesn't. Wouldn't it be better to have him here? Literally running around to damage his brain for our entertainment? Dr. Curry talked about all of this. He said, that's what they say. Black male privilege. You all get to go out and be professional athletes and make all this money, and Dr. Curry, and get brain damage and die penniless. Or hey, I guess he may not have been penniless, but he didn't even make it to 25. Marshawn Nealon. Speaking of privileged black males, that segment on Daryl Burton in the Kansas City area, wow. Wrongly incarcerated, that might have been related to Roger Golubsky and his racist clan. Have to double investigate, but oh my God. He founded the nonprofit Miracle of Innocence. Reminded me of the group home song Suspended in Time about black males sent off to prison. And it's like, they have lost 20, they've been asleep for 20 years. And wait, what? What? Smartphone? What? Who? Donald Trump is president? What? Trump just can't even process anything that's going on. I can't even do an application because I think you got to have a pencil to do this. What you mean you don't use pencil for application no more? Come on. They say we want to give you you ain't got no skills. What have you done the last 20 years? Head count? Yard time? Solitary confinement? Black male privilege. And he kept saying, oh man, you were innocent? Oh no, we can't do nothing for you. We only got programs for people who is guilty. We can't help you get no housing. We got no. We only help the guilty. That even reminded me. Some folks have said, like, dang, you can be out and homeless and broke and starving. We ain't got no help. No, we can't do that. Soon as you commit a crime, hey. Now we got housing and bed and food, all kinds of resources. Like, wait a minute. Now, come on. I even said, they mentioned Evanston. They have a program where once you go to jail, you can go to Northwestern and go to school and all that and get a degree. I said, man, sure would be nice if they could get programs to get black males before they are a convict so that they could maybe you get the elementary school pipeline to Northwestern. How about that, as opposed to the prison pipeline to Northwestern? Anywho, but Daryl Burton, he's ain't got no skills and all the rest of it, and then y'all don't help innocent people. Like, man. He talked about the PTSD of all of this. That's where he mentioned Daryl Hunt. I talked about he having night terrors and all that. Again, I wish Dr. Welsing, I would have sent her that segment. She said black people do not qualify for black mental health. There you go. There you go. I wake up thinking I'm still in greater confinement, being chased and about to be killed and all the rest of it. Lack of or disruption of sleep is very bad for your mental health. We just talked about that related to the extreme heat. The book on Daryl Hunt that we discussed before, reading is more important than watching television. If you need summer reading, damn it, I read this book as summer reading. Take that, put in your, I don't want to read something like that going to depress me and make me feel bad. I want to go to the beach. I read this book for the summer. It was constructive. Beyond Innocence, The Life Sentence of Daryl Hunt by Phoebe Zerwick. Again, you can go back in the couch. You have a ready-made study guide. We have the white author here, asked her questions. She hung out the whole program. I learned a lot, and that is in a sneaky way related to the O.J. Simpson trial in many ways. And I will say quickly, that interview with Daryl Burton that was done by racist suspect Steve Kraske, white man with Kansas or St. Louis Public Radio. He, how shall I say? I thought that was Negro trauma drama. Why do I say that? Or not. That was Kansas City Public Radio. Kansas City Public Radio. But Negro trauma drama, where white people will go and talk to a black person or interview them about all of the, like when he says, so, Mr. Burton, what was your stay like once you got out? And he says, oh man, I went and stayed with her. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any skills. I've been locked up all these decades. I'm a privileged black male. And the landlord said, no, you can't stay over there on this couch that long. You got to get on out of here. Now beat it. So he says, I was homeless for a while. He says, what? You were homeless? What? That's crazy. Come on, Steve, because he's done interviews. He's not ignorant about white supremacy, racism. Like, you've heard all of this before. Even where he's the part where Mr. Burton says, I couldn't get a job. Nobody's going to hire me. I didn't have to check the box. And so there's double whammy. You was a Negro male and you didn't get on out of here. You didn't rape my daughter or something. Beat it. Get on out of here. So he says he can't get a job, can't get an interview, nothing. Says finally, they look on the application like, what? Wrongfully convicted? What? Oh my God. That's why we'll give you a job. And so he doesn't grasp that it's 50 miles. So he says, I'm going to ride on my bike. Steve Kraske, did you hear him? He's like, you were going to bike 50 miles? Like, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And he said, hey man, I'm a prisoner. I'm a privileged black male. They didn't have no, mathematics programs. I didn't learn calculus while I'm in there. And I mean, they gave me a job. I just said, hey, I'm gonna go to it. I didn't think it snows some days, or it rains some days, or it's 30 degrees some days, or they got hills, or, you got to bike 100 miles every day. I'm just thinking, I got a job. I got to go do it. And Steve said, he gonna bike 50 miles. Negro trauma drama. And I've heard him do a few interviews that are similar where even if it was, I don't really think that's funny. It really, wow. Like, yeah, you can think, you didn't think this through clearly, like, at all. You also could, worthy of great pity. It's like, I thought black people were lazy. Like, I thought the response, but bike 50 miles? Are you crazy? I'll knock the hell out of you. I'm not biking 5 miles. Matter of fact, you done wore me out for the day right now. I'm taking a vacation for the next month. Talk about bike 50. I don't walk 5 miles. I'm not fitting to walk a half a mile. Bike 50. We ain't gonna talk ever again. Don't you call my phone. That's what I thought the lazy, no-count, shiftless black male's supposed to do. Go home and snort crack at the thought of that. He didn't say it. He's bike 50 miles. No problem. Where my bicycle at? Let's go. What? That's what, I was thinking of, not go. Negro trauma. Not all white people is racist. I thought that was so just all of it. It does not get any better than tacky. Steve Kraske, Kraske. We did hear Philando Castile's mother, Valerie Castile. That's the preface. That was his mother, where she says it's a silent war against African American males and females. We're being hunted. That's Philando Castile's mother from 10 years ago. And then we heard her in the segment talking about how it's been 10 years and trying to work with the police about these stops and all the rest of it. I'm reminded of many things. The black author of the book Skill in Action, she references the murder of Philando Castile, but she's so incompetent and sloppy and insincere about her effort to replace white supremacy with justice. She gives the incorrect year. She dates this incident as 2017, and then she fails to name Philando Castile. So wrong date, no name. So you can't even go and figure out, oh, you're talking about Philando Castile. You're just doing it in a highly inaccurate, incompetent, insincere way. Got it. Black male privilege. Anyway, and I'm not even saying her name here. Anyway, but they talked about having it been 10 years. That would be one I remind, like just having a firearm as a black person, even a law-abiding, legal firearm, because President Trump is talking about make sure we got our rights, our Second Amendment rights and all that. Like for Philando Castile, shot him 7 times on the live stream. 7 times. That's your black male privilege for just trying to do the correct thing. I'd say that's one to think about for being a black gun owner, male or female. It does not make you safer. Sometimes it might make more danger for you, where you have to be even more careful, and even then that might not be sufficient. And we heard the section on Nolan Wells. Already talked about that in great detail. I will make sure I give a salute to Colin Kaepernick and Tyler Perry, unless I've been misinformed, for paying for an independent autopsy. Gregory Johnson, those autopsies are very important, especially in a system of violence and lying. Again, I keep bringing up Sade Robinson. I don't think we grasp that white people are dangerous. White people are dangerous. We do not understand what it means to be white. We do not understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, how it works. Gus T submits, unfortunately, you mix all that in together, thinking, hoping, not all white people are racist. That can be a lethal combination of ignorance and confusion. Gratitude to Tyler Perry and Colin Kaepernick for the autopsy, but man, talk to your children about white. Hey, if you need an easement, I don't know what to say in the books and all that. You can watch the report or listen to the report that we played on Nolan Wells. Go get that episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Alonzo Brooks. Watch, discuss. What do you think? Similarities to Nolan Wells, and then see if you can find some other cases like this. It should be easy. You could pile up a long list. One black person. Find some of the ones with one black female, because we talked about some of those too. One black person going hanging out with white, and then you seen what happened. Talk to your children honestly about the system of white supremacy, racism. It could save their life. Literally, it could save their life. We are confused. And if you're going to have children, make sure you educate yourself and are already thinking, I'm going to be courageous, and I'm going to talk to my child honestly about racism. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie. That's what I signed up for, having these children. So, hey, get to it. And talk about my personal situation with white people. Real quick, for Alonzo Brooks, they went to Lacyn, Kansas, Lacygne. That's where he went and mysteriously perished. Lacyn, predominantly white, approximately 90% white, according to the demographics at Data USA, approximately 90% white. I remember that from the Unsolved Mysteries report, that it was a very, very, and 1.5% black. Very tiny population. And that's a little bit more than Big Fork, Montana, where it was 0.2, a teaspoon, and a little bit more than Michelle Alexander's Ashland, Oregon, which is also 0.2% Negro. But yes, they don't have very many black people in Lacyn, where Alonzo Brooks perished, mysteriously being the only black person present. Unsolved Mysteries. This is in the newer series of Unsolved Mysteries, not the oldies, moldies. We will be here on, Wednesday. White guest, COINTELPRO, Gusty, update. Let's see about those FOIA requests, and do FBI officials, do they honor those deadlines? We will chat it up or talk with our guest on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive. Hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. You'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous gratitude for all of our investors. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy racism. Man, especially in the summer. Hey, I do not know nothing about what happened with Nolan Wells. I don't know nothing. We'll get the autopsy report. Hopefully he was sober. That's the sort of situation where especially you do not want to be under the influence, and then, oh man, I got to try to make the best decisions to get myself out of a very dangerous situation. You want to be sober, and that's the way you want to speak to your children. This isn't a morality thing. This is you have to think to save your life in a system of white supremacy racism. And it's the 100 deadliest days on the road. And with the pools, again, some of our listeners, Mama C, she just passed the bogus swim course. They tried to say afterwards, oh no, they ain't accredited, you're not official now. But she did want to give out a reminder to attempted parents, be safe around the pools. A retired firefighter has given us many public service announcements over the years. It does not take very much time. It does not take very much water to have a fatal accident around the water. If you live in an area where if your neighbors have a pool, if you live near, I've been talking about lakes and all the rest of it, if you live where any of that bodies of water are close by, I know it's been extreme heat in many areas. And so folks might be dying for a way to cool down and get a little bit of respite from all of that. And so just go hop in the pool or what have you, or sneak into a neighbor's pool or all the rest of it. Talk to your children, and then maybe even go and just have a quick neighborly chit chat with, if it's a neighbor, if they have a pool or what have you, just making sure they're doing things to stay safe. And children, hey, everyone as a child is enticed by a pool, so making sure they're doing things to keep it safe so that children don't sneak in and all the rest of it. And then parents talking to their children, pool safety, and not doing anything stupid, even though it is hot weather. Same thing if there's a lake or anything by there. I think there have been a number of drownings already, and because of the system of white supremacy, and I mean like centuries of deliberate white supremacy racism, you have lots of black people who cannot swim still. In fact, we're still learning. That's a big one. if you're classified as black, any age really, if you don't know how to swim, take a swim class. That should really be mandatory if you're going to have children. That way you get your child swim lessons, and you can take swim lessons with them. That way everybody learns how to swim, and that may be a life-saving skill. Not for them to be reckless, but just, hey, lots of black people do not know how to swim, and that ends up being a detriment and even curtailing experience that you could have in life. I remember being in Milwaukee this time last year going kayaking, and I was telling black people, and I'm like, I'm go kayaking, I don't even know how to swim. I don't know, which that would probably have been my thought process too if I didn't know how to swim. I went kayaking. It was particularly after all that ugliness, the Sade C. Robinson murder trial. Some gentle, and this wasn't like rough rapids and you could fall out and kill yourself. This was just very gentle, smooth, calm, soothing kayaking. So it was very peaceful. I bragged about being the last one to make it back in the group because I was not in a hurry, taking a leisurely stroll down the river. Anywho, sobriety would be best. Learn how to swim. Be cautious on the road if you are black. That's it. Creator, remind us. Stop saying for Nolan Wells. Stop saying not all white people are racist. Creator, remind us. Stop saying. Stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. Even Benjamin Crump. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. C.O.W.S signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. We will be here at minimum Wednesday evening. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.